Hello, y'all, and welcome to another day of the CLOL Championship. We're getting ready for our lower bracket quarterfinal. This is so exciting. My name is Rafa. You may know me from multiple other leagues and broadcasts, but this is actually a really cool day for me because even though I have been involved in the collegiate scene, doing things like Gateway Legends or even Packy back in the dinosaur days for me, it seems like back in 2019. This is the first time I've ever been on a CLOL championship broadcast, so this is super exciting for me. I'm glad I get to do it with my boy Alk Battery, who's been like my OG casting buddy since day one. Shout out to EGN Everlife Gaming Network, the true trenches of the day. Man, I'm going down memory lane now. All right, get me out of the nostalgia factor. Let's catch everyone back up.
I'm glad to have you on the show and also have your first be such an important matchup. We have here in the top 5 of CLOL Championship. If you joined us yesterday, we got to see 2 matchups, one in the upper bracket for Ole Miss and Western. Then we also got to see, if anything, we can actually just straight up kick it to our bracket. I think that's the easiest way to kind of show us what ended up happening yesterday and kind of what's going to continue to take place. Maryville versus Fisher. The reason why Fisher are down here for our match between them and UST, they got 3-0'd. Not much really to say there. Maryville took care of business, even with Shimmer and the lineup having to do some change-ups. So I think we got stomps almost across the board. Actually, the only 2 series that were competitive, or at least went to 4, were the UHSP St. Thomas team, which matchup, which again was on the stream yesterday. We got to see it over on Salty Runback NA if you want to go catch that VOD. And our second series of the day, which was Winthrop versus Northwood. Winthrop almost basically won like 4 games there. They kind of threw at the end of game number 3. Should have basically been a 3-0, but now we get to have some of our teams come on through, and we're now battling for top 4, which is, I think, an incredible kind of fact of we're already here. We're almost at the end of the tournament.
Yep. This is now Fisher St. Thomas trying to fight for a spot in that top 4 for the end of the CLOL Championship run. If you are Fisher College, if you are St. Thomas, you are 3 series wins away from getting a chance to book your tickets to North Carolina, to Raleigh, and competing in the grand finals for our CLOL Championship at the end of the month. So it's a long road ahead of them. 3 series wins seems like a daunting task, but at least we know that is also making this particular series really exciting in terms of history. It's not the first time that these teams have made it all the way to, CLOL Championship final. At least Fisher College, you've been telling me before, is kind of like the spiritual successor to Bay State College back in the 2022 final, where they did take on University of St. Thomas, and it was St. Thomas successful and triumphant in netting their first ever CLOL Championship title before going on another back-to-back win for the 2023 title afterwards. So these 2 teams would definitely love to make a run and see if they can, go and be in the grand final one last time.
Yeah, we can take a look at the prize pool as well. I think when you kind of look at this, a lot of the students are looking forward to the LAN. I think that is the biggest portion of any part of the CLOL conference. When we talk about them being able to play, them maybe even going into a grand finals. Prize pool, again, it's scholarship, so per team going to be split up 16 to all the way down to 5,000 in 4th. They're going to actually be playing for a chance to make it into the prize pool. Loser ends up not getting any of this, which kind of sucks, but that is just part of the competition, and I think it's very exciting for a lot of these teams, particularly UST, who is, according to their coach and according to their substitute support player, Nova, talking about the final year of the program. I think being able to go on one final run with this team after winning in 2022, winning in 2023, changing back the roster to the side where kind of we saw from the very beginning with Array coming back into the lineup. I think there's a lot of exciting stuff on the line here and a lot of history like we were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, St. Thomas, as soon as their program was first started, to my knowledge, back in 2021, Array was on the original roster, but it definitely took some tweaking before they were able to get their first championship title in 2022. And it seemed like for a while, St. Thomas was entering an era of, pure dominance in CLOL before falling to SLU University last year, the eventual CLOL championship winners, making it all the way to the very end. So now it would be awesome for the side of St. Thomas if in their swan song they're able to, at the very least, go as far as possible, making it all the way to grand finals. There's definitely some tougher competition this year than St. Thomas had in their prime and prior years, but we'll see if it starts now. And for Fisher College, as we said before, spiritual successor to Bay State College, the farthest they've ever gone was a grand finals appearance, but not an actual CLOL title. If they want to change history and rewrite, a title for themselves into those chapters, it's got to start now.
Yeah, last year they were able to make top four or top six for Fisher, which I think is really exciting. We can actually just kick it to the rosters. When we look at Fisher versus Winthrop, I'm really excited about certain members on this Fisher lineup. We got to see them in their matchup here on the mainstream versus St.
Mm.
Clair, and Bruness and Waina eventually were able to get to a point where I think they were really, really strong performances coming out from these two. And when I look at this Fisher College roster, there's obviously some of that baggage of saying, hey, like this program previously has had some really high highs, but this is obviously a lot different than those days. But they're also coming from a very strong conference this season. The NECC, they're the second seed out. They actually made a surprise by being able to beat or miss out on Winthrop. Winthrop not coming out as the first or second seed of this conference, I think shocked a couple of people. And so now I think you need to be able to prove it because you have other teams like the Winthrop that I was just mentioning, like Ole Miss, who are making deeper runs into this tournament that have proved that the NECC is trying to challenge the North and specifically Maryville here in the Collegiate Championship.
And based on what our chats have pretty much concluded for me prior to going live with this broadcast, is that Bruness and Wayna are not a jungle mid duo to sleep on going into this matchup. We know that Kenvy and Bradley have definitely made a pretty notable career for themselves competing in tier 2 and to an extent even in tier 1 with Kenvy's brief stint in the LCS on Immortals. But Brunus and Wayna coming over from the EMEA have been very strong, probably the most pivotal members for Fisher's College success and being able to help drive a lot of the early game plays and tempo from them. Doesn't seem like there's any pocket picks that I've been able to pick out from them. Looks like Bruness is able to at least adapt to whatever the meta is playing. I'm seeing a lot of Vi games. I'm seeing a few Nefiri games as well. Wayna definitely playing standard control mages and some of the assassins that come up like the Akali and the Ari. One assassin pick that I am maybe hopeful for is a LeBlanc. A Blanc appearance here,
Maybe,
Dimitri. I know
maybe.
that
We'll
not as
see.
invested though.
Yeah, I just think that there are some question marks. We'll see. We have a lot of stuff to kind of get on through, but we can take a look at their opponents. The third seed coming in from the south, St. Thomas. A bit of a change up, and obviously Nova coming into the rosters. No surprise to anybody who's been seeing St. Thomas play throughout all of these years, but now you have Kenvy and Bradley as your mid jungle. I think with Array coming back, there is a lot of hype for this roster. We saw this lineup originally coming in even last year. They finished third in 2024 for the CLOL Championship, a little bit short than I think a lot of people would have had in terms of expectations. But I think this has been a really exciting roster to watch. And when we talk about St. Thomas, yes, Array and Nova may not be the bot lane that they had been playing with all season, but it seems like they are continuing some of their winning ways, and Array continues to be a beast when it comes to team fights.
Yeah, I mean, Array has definitely been one of the standout ADCs in the tier 2 space overall here for North American League of Legends ever since his debut and being able to start coming into the spotlight in 2021, which is not only when he started becoming a little bit more notable around the scene, being able to play through Supernova and then eventually on to Resolve, which was the successor to Barrage Esports, then getting his first chance in collegiate and being in that first lineup of the St. Thomas program. didn't get a chance to be on that lineup when they won any of their back-to-back titles, since it was Shogo in the lineup. But now Array hoping to see if that he can add a CLOL title to his arsenal of accomplishments over the past few years.
Yeah. Just a lot of history. Again, a spiritual successor to our 2022 Grand Finals. UST obviously still winning that. 2023, they actually played Fisher for a top 8 spot. Also a 2-1 in favor of St. Thomas. So we're getting straight into draft. If you're wondering why we started a little bit late, this was actually supposed to begin about an hour ago, but Fisher were still playing their Play-Fi Grand Finals, and as such, they have been docked as a penalty for being late. They will lose their first 3 bans in this draft, which I think, honestly, you know, it does hurt Fisher, but because they're blue side, they get to open up with literally almost anything. It is just the 3 bans here for St. Thomas in this first game that are going to dictate some of the champions that'll be gone. But we're going to have so much open, so much left on the table that this first game might feel like a fever dream. We might see some champions we're probably never going to see throughout this series, thanks to it not being fearless.
Yep. That is the excitement that I'm really looking forward to, at least for this opener of this best of 5. Now, the flip side is because there's only 3 bans total instead of 6. You as Fisher College are hoping that your first blue side pick is so valuable that it overrides the other 2 back-to-back power picks that St. Thomas are going to get on the flip side, right? So things like Rumble are jumping up to mind. Gwen is still kind of on the table as well if you want to opt in for the trade. We know that Vi has been a go-to jungler for Bruness whenever it is on the table, and looks like we're checking in with the last couple of bans. We know that Neferi and Jace are taken off the table. Outside of that, I'm trying to think of any other priorities that would come through for either of these 2 teams, especially since, at least for the side of Fisher College, they play fairly standard of what is meta so far. And with the Varus, probably the best marksman that you can blind in a majority of these scenarios. To me, this almost screams a Vi angle. It just solid lockdown for the side of Fisher.
Vi first pick, I think, is perfectly fine. Fisher have been really big on the priority when it comes towards picking up this Corki. It is a flex for them, but most of the time putting it down in the bottom lane for Brabro. So we'll see how this ends up kind of turning out as Fisher kind of leaning on some of their older comforts. We're also playing on 2508, so no Spirit Blossom patch. We're going to be back on Anoxus for the rest of the tournament, so we are on Tournament Realm. And St. Thomas immediately picking themselves up, I think, a very good and strong 1-2. We see that they have this Azir locked in for Bradley, but having themselves access to the Ezreal, I think, very early on for Array is reasonable. It means that on 2 items, this team is going to be very strong, and they have the range.
I'm curious if this signals that Nova's going to go for a heavy roam support, or at least a heavy roam playstyle. Obviously, because this is the old Noxus map instead of the new Spirit Blossom map, we still have the earlier rotation of Grubs, right? So 6-minute spawn on that first rotation. I could see a world where by locking in something like an Ezreal for Array, you're basically saying, hey, you know what? We're confident that we can leave you in a potential 1v2, if not 1v1 scenario, so that Nova can get first roam towards the top side and start being proactive with those plays. I'm not sure if this Zoe is actually confirmed or locked in. We at least saw the vibe being confirmed, and that definitely lines up with our expectations here. But wow, it is the Zoe.
Wow, insane. Okay, so Poppy, a flex, can be played in 3 different roles. We'll see how much this actually gets worth. But immediately, kind of stands out to me, Fisher are going to try to play the range war. We're going to be seeing them have to use their poke with this Zoe. They're going to have to try to eventually use Vi as kind of their go button. I think one more support pick that kind of helps them lead forward would maybe help. A bot lane maybe paired up with a Nautilus is something that I might be thinking of if I'm Fisher. If we get into the back end of these drafts, we're at the second phase of bans, and you see that St. Thomas, they've banned their Braum for the time being. I'm kind of looking at what they would want to pair with Corki. I think you want to get rid of strong support picks. Maybe even I think an Alistar Rel is hard when there's a Poppy in the enemy team, but you need someone to go forward. You're going to need someone that's going to be able to step up and at least provide secondary engage alongside this Vi.
I mean, Nautilus definitely feels like the best potential pick that you can go for because you don't
Yeah.
have to rely on dredge lines to start things up. If you have the ultimate, you can at least walk in range of someone, and then you're gonna ult, and then Poppy can't stop you from ulting, right? Since it's not a dash. So that definitely lines up with what seems like it would be best for Fisher College. Also could guarantee things like the Zoe bubble being layered on top of a target if it, connects through and no one is able to block it for them. But I'm also curious about what is going to be selected for top side as, wow, Fisher College believed that, the Poppy was definitely not going support, and they wanted to eliminate another strong support option for Nova.
Okay, so yeah, I was gonna say the Leona immediately snaps into my mind. Like, hey, they have a Zoe, they have a Corki. Like, if we're talking about the lane 2v2, now you have Ezreal, Leona. We talk about the mid game setup. They're gonna have that ability to just send out the solar flare and find a target onto Fisher. So St. Thomas. Kind of turning a way into kind of like a snap where as soon as one person's out of position, we're just trying to find them with all of our CC, have a large amount of damage. Poppy is going to add so much more to this team and being able to just find and engage or push members out from Fisher. With how low durability some of these champions can be, I'm looking at this from the side of Fisher and I'm thinking, okay, Poppy ult is actually really, really valuable, and the amount of damage that comes out from St. Thomas is nothing to scoff at. So Fisher, they need to be on top of their engages. They need to be playing their range very effectively. Otherwise, I think they've run into an issue where they have no front line and are incredibly susceptible to just getting poked out.
Yeah, because Rakan in most scenarios is not the tankiest frontline support that you can guarantee for yourself. Kind of can be a little squishy at times, especially if you're not, going for some of the tankier itemizations that prioritize health and resistances, and probably something more along the lines of CDR and maybe ability power just for that extra shielding for the side of this roster. But yeah, with this in mind, not only for St. Thomas, you have a Poppy in the jungle, you have a Leona, which, both of these roles are going to be fairly low econ, but we have seen Poppy in other games when she gets ahead and instead of going for a full tank build, goes for something like a Sundered Sky. Her base damage is not something to really scoff at. And then now with this Gragas on top of it, I look at this composition, Dimitri, and to me it's like, you've got so much powerful disengage available. Like, this is a composition that thrives on just kiting back and playing with range, and then anytime that Fisher College wants to engage, Poppy ult, get out of here. Emperor's Divide, get out of here. Explosive Cast, get out of here. Get off of our backline.
Yeah, they can certainly do that. I mean, what I'm thinking about for Fisher is that with Vi, you're going to have to send this Rakan in as like a secondary. Like, these two are going to fly in. You're going to have the quickness providing all of that crowd control. They're going to have some, I think, strong solo lanes, though. You do have the Zoe versus Azir, so typically when we've seen this matchup in years past, this is a matchup where Zoe tries to use her extended amount of range versus the Azir to try to get burst damage down, similar to like a Xerath. And Gwen into Gragas, as long as Gragas doesn't get any kind of funny business going down in the early lane, this should be one where Gwen is going to be very, very dominant as the game goes on and kind of just being able to split push. So I want to see how UST are able to navigate throughout the situation, because while they do have I think a solid amount of frontline, one thing that might end up kind of biting them is the fact that they don't have, I think, as much consistent DPS outside of their Azir. And I'm looking at this composition from Fisher, and I'll be honest, Mark, I don't know if I like this. I don't know if I'm liking this from our blue side team right now. There's so many like conditionals that you have to step through. It's like, no Poppy ult, there's no Leona ult ulting my face.
Yeah.
My Zoe has to land damage. Like, you have to outplay your opponents in this kind of draft.
That's what I'm saying, like if it was just one disengage tool that was on the side of St. Thomas, okay, yeah, you at least have multiple ways to overload it. But there's literally like 3 different ways that they can punt back divers as soon as they try and connect. Or you can even use your disengage tools on the backline that's trying to like walk up and follow up on the engage, and now suddenly your Vi is deep into the backline with no damage supporting her. So unless like the Vi is super fed, super turbo accelerated, she's not going to get that job entirely done. But we're going to find out how both of these compositions unfold and play out here in our first game of our lower bracket quarterfinal as we take to the Rift for game 1.
Exciting stuff, I think, between these two. Top 5 for both of these rosters, already performing up to their seed. They would obviously like to continue to go forward and make a top 4. This is the 3rd seed in UST versus the 4th seed on the side of Fisher. So anything lower than winning out today is a little bit of a disappointment. Not all that bad in terms of seeding, but also you think about the path that these two teams got to be here. UST again dominating the South Conference. Fisher making their way here and unfortunately getting trounced out of the upper bracket by Maryville. They were on track to continue their side, but they may have got the unlucky side of the bracket, aka the side where Maryville plays. And you know, they're already here in the lower bracket. They made a very deep run.
Yeah, it is one of those things, but as we are getting ready for our first game of the day and seeing not much action happen, I just want to remind everyone at home that this stream is powered by Exit Lag, and why I use Exit Lag is it reduces lag, connection instability, and packet loss for a smoother gaming experience. Thank you, Exit Lag, as we turn back to the game. Laning phase has begun, minion waves are starting to crash, and this is where the fun begins.
Alright, so junglers are pathing to opposite sides here. We did see that there was an early ward placed by Fisher onto the Raptors, so they know exactly where Kenvi is starting. And something that we'll be keeping track of is this mid jungle, but in this game, I kind of want to look at our bottom lanes. Brabro and Magi having to have a very big test playing up against Array and Nova. And Brabro and them have not really been the strongest 2v2, at least from what we have seen from their series. So this is going to have to be a market improvement. They played against a lot of great bot laners, not only in their own conference, the NECC versus Winthrop and Ole Miss, are going to have to continue to do that here in the championship.
Gotta keep it up here. Now, this Zoe pick is definitely going to be a kind of a wild card factor here. It's not often we get to see Zoe in the tier 2 speed. Okay, Kenvi just going to make some action early on and tags Yao Yao with the Empowered Buckler auto attack, so guarantees the slow with the red buff. Should be enough. And yeah, woohoo! Wait, Yao is able to actually trade 1 for 1 and still surviving long enough that it forces the flash out of Kenvi. Definitely not the scenario that St. Thomas wanted to have for themselves, but Fisher College gets first blood.
Yeah, I mean, now they're just going to be able to trade teleports. Shouldn't be all that bad for Porsche. Great job from Yayo to be able to get that and find that trade. That was obviously very surprising. And the fact that he lived for so long, also a little problematic here for Kenvi, as he is now just now getting back to his 4th camp of the game. Yayo is also going to be able to pick up most of this wave, so decent job from the top laner of Fisher College to make out on what was a early game gank from Kenvi.
Meanwhile, Ignite already used onto Bradley's Azir here, but Nova with the roam is going to lock this Zoe down. Ignite ticking. Wayna is going to use the Ignite picked up from Nova's own Ignite, and it gets the movement speed thanks to the passive of that W. And this Zoe not even having the burn flash to escape.
Is Nova dead? Yeah, he just has to use the flash. This was very questionable because even with Bradley coming back to lane, as soon as Electrocute comes back up for Wayna, like, he can actually just find a solo kill here. Also has access to the flash. You can see that Bruness and them are standing around. They want to take control of this top side of the mid lane. And Wayna, no teleport in this matchup, meaning that he's going to have to play a little bit more aggressive, try to find timers onto Bradley. But Azir's not backing, so still an okay spot here for UST.
I've been server muted, I think.
Yes, because we can hear each other in VMix.
Oh, okay, my bad. I'm so sorry. I
It's
panicked
okay.
for a second.
Keep going.
I was okay. Back to live, y'all. The thing that I wanted to talk about was how devastating it is for Porsche to not only go down his first blood, but the fact that he does go down, forced to use the teleport. So that advantage for Kenvi being able to kill Yayo doesn't even really net this Gragas anything. And now with the early swap from Magi as well as Brabro going to the top side, obviously in preparation for the first rotation of Grubs, is putting Porsche in a really uncomfortable spot because his bot lane has not made the swap yet either proactively. And so now Porsche, a big wave is stacking. Thankfully for him, Bruness is on the other side of the map, so there's no chance to make a proactive dive against the Gragas, but still, not a
Yeah.
fun place to be in.
I think this is fine. It's Gragas, though. Like, Gragas, weak side top lane, I think it's fine. He also has a lot of spells to be able to play on the bounce back. We're seeing some chip damage. We're going to see how much these two bottom lanes can actually get out of the swap, with Fisher College being the ones to initiate it first. We did see that Bruness was covering for Yayo as UST were prepping for a dive onto the bottom lane. Weren't able to make that happen. I wonder if they'll actually go for the swap back now, knowing that Gragas should be looking for some way out of this lane matchup. And yes, they do have the grub spawning in a minute, but I think that UST would be a team that actually is a lot more favored at being able to use this objective. So we're now seeing, yep, the two top laners go straight into the bottom lane. It'll be a 4-on-4 playing for these grubs. I think I like UST's odds a little bit better thanks to having a Leona, but okay.
I think Nova is dead here because he doesn't have flash from the prior exchange that we saw a couple minutes ago in the mid lane. St. Thomas just a little concerned about their communication right now, trying to decide whether they wanted to make that play onto Wayna in the mid lane for Zoe, but didn't make it fast enough, and because they didn't commit, the rest of Fisher College showed up with grander numbers, and now that guarantees a majority of these grubs, if not all of them.
Yeah, I think Kenvi should have just escorted his support out of the play there. Ends up not happening, gives over a kill to Fisher, so some more of this gold going over to the fourth seed coming from the NECC. Going to be feeling pretty good. It does go on to Vi, so obviously not perfect, but the fact that they're able to get 3 grubs here, got to be feeling okay with their spot here in this game. And we're talking about gold. We're talking about when these teams are really spiking. For me, I'm looking at UST on 2 items. You're going to have fully completed Muramana completed for your Ezreal. You're going to have Azir on 2. Them on objectives is going to be kind of the name of the game. And you have tons of frontline to be able to prevent anything from Fisher.
Whereas for Fisher College, outside of something like a Gwen, this team feels really good at 1 item into the game. Obviously, their second item spike is nothing to scoff at, but once they have the first item completed, I'm imagining that Fisher College are going to be even more aggressive, even more proactive, really try and guarantee that gold advantage, that map advantage with all the turrets being taken off the board, so that by the time St. Thomas gets to two item spikes, they'll feel like it's too late. As a flash attempt from Wayna to try and look for a soul kill on Bradley. Unfortunately for him, Kenvi was waiting in the shadows, and Bradley just sends him for an easy scoop.
Ah, man, if Wayna didn't have enemy jungler in that mid, I think that's a kill onto Bradley, but he gets another wave shoved in. This mid counter pick has not worked out. There's been so much attention from UST in support and jungle just to try to make this play happen. Good flash from Bruness. Do they have Kenvi?
Setting it up for the ultimate. Kenvi is not going to survive since Bradley could not do anything there even if he wanted to. No Emperor's Divide, he already used it for the play on Zoe, and at best he could send like a soldier to slow him down with Conquering Sands, but that is not going to bail him out. So yeah, really clean stuff by Bruness to flash the hammer.
We wanted to see an improvement coming in from Bruness. They were a big part of their series in the quarterfinals versus St. Clair, and glad to see that Bruness is still stepping up. The only issue that I kind of have now is that you picked this Zoe specifically for the matchup, trying to get around this Azir. There are still plenty of opportunities for Wayna to actually step up, but this first game, not looking all that hot for the mid laner of Fisher College, but that'll be the Feats of Warfare going over to them. And hey, they were able to get a lot of gold now onto this Vi. That was something that we had noted earlier, that maybe they have a possibility of being able to turn this game.
Perhaps. It will come down to, hopefully, maybe the jungler as well as Magi trying to step in and bail out Wayna, Zoe out in this mid lane setup. Still will have really strong pick potential as long as you can get to that first item spike, because then you can start dipping into fog, threatening with your Sleepy Trouble bubble, because then you will kind of reach a point on this Zoe where you can completely force out members on St. Thomas, especially if they're squishy, and that becomes really strong for objective plays, but that still feels like a while away. We're waiting for our second rotation of grubs to spawn. Neither team has taken the first dragon of the game, since it hasn't really been a really strong opportunity to do so. So much of the priority has just been focused around playing around mid lane.
I'm looking at this from Fisher. They can go anywhere Bruness is. He's already finished the Sundered Sky so early into this game. They're seeing if UST are going to step forward. They do not know that the Vi is in the area.
Oh, the lockdown onto Nova, forced to flash away. Cease and desist is still
there's
available.
a play in mid though,
Bruness
Waina.
holds onto it. Meanwhile, Waina in trouble there. Kenvi being able to escort and guide Bradley back to safety. The 2v1 quickly happens, and there's nothing that Fisher College can really do to save their mid laner. And they don't even feel comfortable starting up this dragon because they have to deal with the mid lane wave first, as Kenvi still hovering around making sure that Bruness cannot jump onto Bradley. Gonna go send it with a cease and desist though, and he's got backup with Brabro and Magi, and now Kenvi's in a world of trouble because his bot lane is all the way on the other side of the map. But the flash away, Kenvi is gonna run for the blast cone. He's calling for his support, he's calling for his AD carry. Is anyone nearby to bail a brother out? No one is near. It's just gonna have to be Kenvi making the longest sprint of his life. The flash forward from Magi.
Kenvi!
Magi's gonna get slowed to the tower. Don't tell me he dies to that. Oh my goodness, he's so low. But Bruness is gonna send it the spot. But Bruness is gonna give us the shutdown goal for it. I think Kenvi's typing hashtag worth in the chat right now.
Look, the shutdown may have gone over to Kenvi. Such a large amount of wasted time from Fisher. Just let him recall, guys. We could have gone for Dragon. We had just picked out their mid and jungle. We just found an angle onto Nova. Waina had fallen. I mean, biggest winner out of that is actually Waina. He does go down, but at least they had that yakety sax moment of trying to chase Kenvi on this Poppy. I don't know what we're doing, guys. Just go for the objective. We know that this game is one that gets a little questionable for us if it does go late.
Definitely felt like they were lost in the sauce there, just trying to take out Kenvi, being a big name in this collegiate space. Meanwhile, okay, Solar Flare doesn't connect first before Bradley scoops it, but you know what? The job still gets done anyway for St. Thomas. Another kill goes down into the Zoe.
Nova is putting so much work, and the rest of UST are really making sure that Waina is taken down. That is a good strategy that we have seen in some of their series in the past. Waina, not the strongest laner, and has had some of his difficulties.
Oh.
Okay,
the explosive
well,
cast does not find the mark, and
survives.
Porsche is forced to flash. Yeah.
Are they going to go for this dive, though? Because Azir is getting plates on the bottom side of the map right now. He is taking this turret, and there's an entire set of grubs. Their bottom lane's connecting.
Bruness is trying to look for something here. Kenvi got a chance to finish his first item of the game, which is a dead man's plate. So, not the Bruiser Poppy, not the, Sundered Sky first item, but will be super tanky and will be incredibly fast on the map, which will be really nice with the way St. Thomas are playing this so far, because Kenvi looks like he is just trying to be everywhere all at once.
That's all you have to do on this Poppy, though, a lot of the time. Bruness does get caught here. Leona doesn't have the Solar Flare.
Good Keeper's Verdict forces Bruness to flash away from the danger of the Zenith Blade, but now it's the re-engage off of Magi, and that forces Kenvi to flash away from the quickness.
I think right now you're still looking at this in favor of UST. They can walk right back into the pit if they want to. You still have this Gragas to provide CC. But instead it's going to be 4 grubs here for Fisher. Kenvi is instead going to go back towards down to the bottom lane. Again, no first dragon taken here at 14 minutes. I think very surprising with how this game has gone. UST, though, a big focus for me is going to be how do they get gold into this Azir. They've already done a lot of great work by getting some early ganks, a lot of vision here for Bradley, but he's already completed his first item, and that second item coming on through, whether it's the Leandries or something a little bit different, provides so much damage for St. Thomas. So you already see now they're going for this first dragon. They can even reset and go for grubs since it hasn't been taken.
Yeah. I like the item breakpoint that you've kind of brought up here, because as we talked about, this was supposed to be a counterpick matchup in the mid lane for Waina, and Fisher College, they've been at least able to get revenge kills in the backside, but they haven't been able to always set up the Zoe to receive that extra bit of gold. Now, having completed the Ludens is on that first spike, but it definitely is slightly behind tempo in the item curve, and we talked about how this Fisher College roster or composition really wants to operate. They want to be ahead of the curve. They want to be spiking super hard in this mid game before St. Thomas gets to those 2 items comfortably.
And Bradley has done a really good job of making sure that he gets gold. Yes, he's had a lot of assistance, but having alone time in this bottom wave does mean that he's picked up more than his opponent, that he's also a little bit higher in terms of experience. So good job from the mid laner of UST to bring this back home. Yayo trying to force with the all-in.
I think he's got Porsche. There's no flash available. However, Yayo is going to flash forward, and that guarantees the solo kill. Being able to dodge multiple body slams as well as using that mist the right time of the explosive cast. Meanwhile, face check into the bush. It's right onto Bruness. Remember, no flash available. Keeper's Verdict only punts Magi away, but it's enough to at least protect Kenvi on the way out. Nova did take a big chunk from Waina's Zoe with the Sleepy Trouble bubble. And now it's the last two grubs being contested. Or not.
I feel like Fisher College should feel like they can contest this, but they're not. They're instead buying time for Brabro on the bottom side. We also just saw Yayo with that solo kill onto Porsche. So we mentioned during the draft that this should be a free laning phase for the Gwen, and so far has had a very good time of being able to take down this Gragas. So might be an issue in this game. Who is dealing with Gwen? Who is going to be a champion that kind of gets into the back line and is able to stop Yayo from tearing them up with the ultimate?
Oh, another gank from Kenvi onto Waina. This time he has a flash to be able to escape danger as the wall slam not enough.
But Mark, look at the gold though. Like, we're getting another turret here for the Azir. This is huge for UST.
Yeah, St. Thomas clearly know their win conditions for this game. Continue keeping Bradley accelerated and in the game. Sleepy Trouble Bubble does connect off the cease and desist. Does Bruness have enough damage? Good Vault Breaker, forcing Bradley to flash backwards, but it's not enough. But here comes the teleport. Yayo finally gets the shutdown on the Golden Bird, and Kenvi's gonna look to try and get one trade kill back before he goes down. Explosive cast, Bomba! Down goes Zoe, but now it's a double being fed over to Yayo's Gwen, and I have to say, if you are a Fisher College, you are now just riding on the Gwen train to get you out of this game one.
Gwen was able to get that shutdown onto Bradley. I'm very worried about it now because we were just talking about what is Gwen's answers for UST. Now you're going to be able to potentially finish a second item here very early as the Gwen. Huge power spike coming in, and Yayo putting in a carry performance here versus UST, but so much gold has now gone on to Bradley. Finished Death Cap second here with his Nashor too, so he has a ton of damage. We have the potential Rift Herald start with Bruness eventually pathing his way up into top side.
Wait, are you telling me no one took the last two grubs before Rift Herald spawned? That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, hell, we didn't get first dragon until 14 minutes in this game, so we're in for a bit of a slow one here.
All right, well, yeah. Well, if Rift Herald is now the next objective, I feel like that is not going to be really looked at proactively by either team, but St. Thomas at least trying to set up mid-priority first with Bradley shoving out the wave. Kenvi does find himself right into Yayo's face. Cease and desist still on the cards here. Solar Flare at least is able to stun up one. Nova dies going down, but the Keeper Verdict punted another away. So a couple flashes already being burned. Kenvi now on the chase, forcing Fisher College away. And even though they lose Nova Bot, they have gained control of the river with all of the low health bars on the side of Fisher College.
And you got two flashes. I think getting the flash out from Bruness and Magi are huge wins for UST. There's no flash engage coming out from either of the members. They're not going to even start it. What? What? That was supposed to be their Herald timer there, Mark. What? Now, I mean, Azir's going to catch Bout Wave, which is nice, but, like, no one is going to get their second or third objective, like, epic monster. Maybe we're playing for the dragon instead of 20 seconds, but I feel like UST would have really liked to have that buff, but instead they're going to go ahead and put themselves on the bottom side of the river and get ready to contest yet again versus some flashless summoner spells.
I mean, there's a play here mid lane, and at least it pulls Bruness away from making that collapse onto Bradley in the bot side of the map. Nova could be in trouble, though. There's 4 members overloaded. A True Shot Barrage is going to sail on by. Not really do any damage to Fisher College members here. St. Thomas gonna get slept by a Trouble Bubble. A lot of damage onto Kenvi, but Array just finds the Mystic Shot over the wall, lining it up with the portal jump. Kenvi is too low to walk into the river by himself, so now it's Array and Bradley trying to see if they can get vision and look for a Miracle Seal. Don't think it's gonna happen. Bruness should have the smite here. It is secured. Now here comes the escape route. Kenvi stops at least one dash with the Vault Breaker. Robro flashing in
Robro?
forward, trying to look for one more auto attack. Not enough, but the good shielding from Magi at least keeps his Corki alive from going down. Bradley holding his ground, looking for the Conquering Sands, and the Sand Soldiers putting in a lot of work here. And Fisher College not able to find any more kills off the back of it, but at least they got the Dragon.
You know, guys, if I had a penny for every time we'd be seeing a Poppy with like 1 HP escape, I'd have 2, which is not a lot. It's just weird already in our first game. We've had Kenvi get away on 1 auto attack's worth of HP. UST, they give up the Dragon. They give up their support for a play onto the Otacon, of a ruinous Otacon as well. So one that's going to give them massive amounts of XP and an ability power here. I think that you are very strong as UST now that you have access to this. This Azir has been turbocharged. You're going to have a Ray now hitting his second items. And if experience was ever an issue for them, they're going to be getting closer and closer to the end game of their composition.
I think if you're Fisher College, you are really trying to help set up Yayo for a big TP flank ward setup for the next objective play. And then you have to just sync up with Vi and Rakan to lock down this Azir, because I don't know how Brabro is going to be able to deal with Bradley. He's behind on the item curve compared to how well St. Thomas have accelerated this Azir. Unless Wayana is able to find like a good Sleepy Trouble bubble, you know, that's always like a decent win condition, right? But it's definitely not been the most reliable one so far.
I gotta say, this also has to be the oldest Rift Herald ever. Usually these guys do not make it past 17 minutes. So we have seen that now from Fisher College. They have access to the Herald. They also have 4 grubs. So how much more gold is Yayo going to be able to grab? They have 4 grubs. He already took this top lane tier 1 by himself. Then I'll summon the Herald. UST are reinforcing this with 2 members. But my worry is despite them getting some of these objectives and stealing some of these camps away, here's the TP flank. We also have Magi moving on down. Bradley's caught.
I think Bradley just needs to send it for a 1v1 trade before he gets collapsed on by everyone else. Bradley knows he's already in a bad spot. He got the flash out of the Zoe, but he's got nowhere else to run, and it's another kill gifted over to Yayo's Gwen. But meanwhile, big play by St. Thomas in the mid lane, somehow being able to find Brabro and capitalizing on the fact that he had used his flash aggressively in that last dragon fight we saw.
We're going to see UST try to push out on these 2 lanes now. Big focus for them is trying to get this mid-tier 1. Wayna, unfortunately, not having the best of games here in the start of the series. And we'll see how Fisher College mount the defense. UST, they're too short range with the members that are still alive. They're really reliant on Bradley being next to them to hit these turrets. And so we haven't actually seen them progress the game all that much. It has been a big focus about UST and how they are able to funnel gold into the mid lane this game. But aside from that, I think Fisher College are very happy with where the game is at. You got 4 grubs. You have a Gwen that is incredibly fed. You have a 2-item Corki now, and everybody's kind of hitting their spikes except for Wayana, but he will always have the Sleepy Trouble bubble at the very least. So I think Fisher College are in a good spot to be able to contest this first game.
I still think that they are pressed with a little bit of a timer. You try wanting to accelerate the game sooner than later, because if we get to extreme late game conditions, obviously this Gwen is going to be a raid boss on her own, but that doesn't answer for, you know, the Azir always, right? If St. Thomas is playing their defensive game, their disengage game super well, they should be able to find one of these tools that keeps the Gwen at distance. Wow, this is an aggressive flash from Kenvi. He's just looking for, oh, okay, it's a setup. Bradley is here right next to him. Unfortunately, Bradley's not able to get in range, so Wayana on the Zoe is able to make an escape away from the 2v1. The rest of Fisher College get a chance to bully out other members of St. Thomas out of the river in the mid lane.
Yeah, they'll be able to take this turret now, and I wonder how much more they're going to get. I mean, Gragas is only coming now. They get first inside track to the dragon that's spawning in 40 seconds. UST are putting so much resources into their side lane that it is pretty tough for them to contest in mid-wave, even with this Ezreal and Leona. It's hard for them to get push. Porsche trying not to get picked out right now. Bradley is split pushing on the time being and will have teleport if they want to try to make this play. But with Fisher being able to, you know, have numbers and have the strength to step up in mid, it's very difficult for UST to ever contest.
Yeah. Bradley just, you know, super accelerating his farm as fast as that motorcycle that just went by my window for St. Thomas.
Nice.
I think if they continue playing the strategy of, you know, hey guys, do your best to survive on the other side of the map, Bradley is just going to kind of play his own game on the side lane and continue forcing out Zoe, since it doesn't seem like they ever want to send the Gwen into the Azir matchup by himself. So it's working to St. Thomas's favor, and it still begs the question that while yes, Fisher College are still in a good spot, they can't just be complacent in being in this spot forever. And now it's a Baron rip on spawn.
Yeah.
I really like this from St. Thomas.
Okay, Fisher, they're going to be late to the play. Magi and Yayo are here first. The rest of the team is crossing through mid. Baron should go over to UST. Can they escape?
Yayo in the middle of all 5 members. Bruness finally arriving to the party. Can he find a cease and desist? But Magi has already been dealt with. Yayo is shut down by Bradley, and you have to imagine that Bruness no longer wants any part of that fight. Brabro also tried to send it, but falls. Bradley with an insane shuffle over the wall is able to now find distance onto Bruness, not letting Fisher College any stragglers out of his sight. It's just Wyena on the Zoe. Maybe can find a little bit of damage, but the Paddle Star won't even connect. And
can they
St. Thomas at 25 minutes. I think so. I think so. Baron buff on their side. They have all 5 members. It's another 10 seconds, 15 seconds on some of the members here. Magi's coming up. Wyena's dead.
That's
this
it.
This is game 1 going over to St. Thomas.
It's been a slow game. It's one where we got to see UST put a lot of gold into Bradley, and he pays it back with a game 1 Nexus explosion. There was so much put into this mid lane. Wyena tried to find the counter with the Zoe. It does not work, and it takes one mistake coming out from Fisher, and the game just completely ends.
Wow.
No, not yet. Not yet.
I mean, that was a pretty cool ending, though. I mean, St. Thomas just... all of the prep work they did on the side lane turrets, because, you know, one of the concerns that you had was they were never able to break open, you know, mid lane that much. And St. Thomas said, okay, cool, that's fine. We're going to have Bradley split push and Kemby consistently shadowing this guy, never allowing for a 1v1 between, you know, Bradley and Zoe, or at least, you know, the threat of a 2v2 trying to collapse onto the Azir, right? And multiple times when Kemby shows up, it guarantees that Zoe can no longer defend the turret. So now they have a largely open lane. So when the Baron goes their way, it's like, hey guys, it's just an inhibitor turret, and that's it. We can push for the game win right here.
Yeah, it took a long time in the series versus St. Clair for this mid jungle of Fisher College to kind of find their step in the series. So wondering how that's going to adapt. Also, the top lane pool, Porsche already showing that he can kind of play that weak side. Did get taken advantage of a few times in the side lane, so we'll see how that develops. And if there's any strategy swap up between Yayo and the rest of Fisher College, maybe they go for more of those tanks, recognizing that this game in the series is more so going to be about those big team fights.
Yeah, or maybe finding a way to leverage Yayo's advantage even stronger, since he did have his way with Porsche in the top lane. But we're going to find out once we come right after this break, so make sure y'all stay tuned. Game 2 will be coming shortly. Welcome back, y'all. We're getting ready for game numero dos between University of St. Thomas and Fisher College, where if you are just tuning in and you missed out on the first game, well, it was kind of like going back to the Wild Wild West. Everyone was chasing each other around the map. The Yakety Sax theme music was playing in the background softly if you really paid attention and listened carefully. But in the end, I think St. Thomas played a better win condition and executed it well in saying, you know what? Bradley on Azir, if he gets a lot of farm, he's going to be able to be a constant nuisance on the side lane. And, Alec, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I was going to say the last time we actually saw the West was a couple of days ago on Wednesday. They actually ended up leaving the tournament with Weber State going down. So at least the West is making some kind of appearance here in top 5. Yeah, but we're here for game number 2. Fisher chose blue side, so we will not have a change of sides. Fisher are also awarded back their bans that they missed in game number 1, so maybe the rest of the series will have some normalcy that we get to see from these two. Already starting off with that Azir ban. We'll see how mid lane and that situation continues to develop here in this series, as Bradley, with a bit of assistance from his team, definitely was able to have the better half of the game versus Waena.
And I think off of that Azir performance alone, even if it wasn't necessarily, always clean setups, just the relentless pressure from it has earned Bradley a permanent Azir ban for the rest of the series. I would not be surprised if we don't see the Azir pop up again. A Lucian ban respecting Array's potential to bring it out, combo with something like a Emilio or even a Nami from Nova on the support. Whereas on the side of St. Thomas, it is more consistent bans or common bans, right? The Gwen being taken off the table, also now finally respecting that Ye was able to have a very good performance despite the loss. Nefiri also biting the ban.
All right, so Jace or Varus, these are two champions that were banned last time and are gonna make it on through. It's gonna be Varus this time. Is still expecting to see the Corki picked up for Brabro. The Lucian ban that you kind of noted is kind of one of the few laning 80 carries that you can kind of take into Corki and deal with him. So wonder what the option is going to be. It looks like we are getting a Jace locked in. Can be a flex between the two solo laners, but expect that this is going to go to Yayo, as he has been performing rather well so far throughout the Collegiate Championships individually.
Yeah, and coming in, to my knowledge, pretty recently, since this roster did used to have Bejani starting, but now with Yayo in the lineup, Fisher College at least being able to find a lot of really solid performances from this guy in the top lane. I mean, had it not been for the Baron fight and the way it devolved on the side of Fisher College, I think Yayo was in a fine position on the Gwen to at least match Bradley's pressure on the Azir. Whereas St. Thomas answering on red side, Vi Ezreal, another Ezreal for Array.
I think this is great. You already have lockdown, so Jace might be in a bit of a tougher spot. We're going to see that Corki immediately come on through from the side of Fisher. And I wonder what they're going to change. Obviously, we've already seen a top lane personnel change in terms of the champion. But I think just with what St. Thomas are already showing, you have a decent enough framework for what they want to be able to do. And we didn't really see Brabro or Magi push Array and Nova very often. It was a lot of times actually Nova having first move out on the map and then him getting caught, but not necessarily seeing some proactivity from the side of Fisher.
Still waiting on what this final lock-in is going to be. Not going to show their jungle hand just yet. Just going to guarantee a reliable support in this Nautilus. Now, St. Thomas side could look for a support counter pick right now, or if there's something else that they want to guarantee for either mid lane or top lane, that would be the options here. I think if you're worried about bans coming out, if you don't lock in your support, that they're going to be eating the ban table, but I like this Scion from Porsche here. That has been a pretty solid answer into the Jace we've seen across tier 2.
Yeah, and also just, it's a matchup where Scion just has so much bonus HP that it's really hard for Jace to ever get any real damage to stick. You gotta find all-ins. See, with St. Thomas, they don't know exactly if this Jace is going towards top side, though. You see that Aatrox ban come on through. Supports instead being the focus for Fisher. I think the Braum is a very obvious one. Maybe they get rid of Leona as well. Again, playing against the Jace would be pretty miserable here. And on 4, with St. Thomas getting first pick out of the ban phase, I think you're going to be looking to just take some kind of support matchup, whichever one you feel more comfortable, whether it is maybe something like an Alistar, or maybe they go for a Rel. You already have tons of engage and a lot of front lines, so from the side of St. Thomas, I think just giving Bradley counterpick in this matchup feels very good.
Yeah, and for the side of St. Thomas, really like the Maokai ban as well. That has been kind of a staple combo in the at least past recent years, when Maokai jungle was at the forefront and Jace was, really starting to reemerge as a staple solo laner for both mid and top. Not going to have that potential anymore to control rushes with objective control and the poke combo. You called it though, Dimitri. Leona was, solid enough of a choice for Nova in the last game. They're going to run it back again.
All right. So Bradley has been someone who has picked out a lot of different champions in the mid lane so far in the Collegiate Championship, so not surprised that he's waiting. We are going to see that Lilia here for Bruness. I was wondering what AP jungler they were going to try to go for in this matchup. Bruness very good at being able to find those full clears, and so we're seeing from the side of St. Thomas, despite them having some champions that might be weaker as this game goes forward, there are not a ton of frontliners from the side of Fisher. You're going to be having this Gnar eventually link up with Magi's Nautilus, and they'll be able to find engages there. But Fisher going in the very similar style of composition that we saw in Game 1. Some crowd control, very soft front line, and something that's going to try to be as explosive as possible in these fights. I think if they're not able to get a first kill to start off, a couple of key engagements, Sion walks in with 3,000 HP. I mean, who's kind of dealing with him? They have guaranteed engage now with the jungle support. I like this from St. Thomas. It's very, very clear as to how they're going to be able to get fights going.
Yeah, I think given that St. Thomas had Kenvi be so proactive on the map, playing around for Bradley's advantage, and that was a clear win condition that, while, execution wasn't always perfect, it got the job done at the end of the day. And talk about, clear execution, or reliable execution on the side of something like a cease and desist can guarantee an Orianna Shockwave Ball delivery system onto multiple members. Hell, you could even send it on to Leona once she finds an engage with the Zenith Blade into a few people here. I think the only saving grace for the side of Fisher College is that Lilia, because yes, Sion is going to get super tanky, but if this Lilia is accelerated and given enough time, getting into the late stage of the game, if the Vi isn't immediately CCing the Lilia to the start of the fight and trying to blow her up, and Lilia survives like the first wave of engages and tools, this Lilia can just run rampant. And then if she takes out the carries first with her squad, then, Sion, yeah, you have a lot of HP, but Lilia's got a ton of HP burn damage on her kit and what she's going to be building this game.
I think the thing that I'll be looking at is, again, our junglers. I know we came into this series thinking this was going to be a much more mid-jungle focused match, and we did see that in game number 1. Now here in second game, I'm looking at Kenvi, man. You're no longer playing the Poppy, you're on this Vi. You have, targeted CC if this Lilia starts to get out of hand. But you can only really land it onto one member, right? You have to pick and choose your battles here. So how and where they decide to fight, UST is going to basically make or break a lot of this game, and we're kind of looking at this. I have to imagine that with an Ezreal and an Orianna, your ability to take control of space once you rock up to a team fight is very, very clear. Anywhere the ball is, nowhere does the side of Fisher really want to be in. So how creative can we see Fisher be in this game is going to basically make or break it for me.
Yeah, I think it was definitely an interesting choice by Bradley to go for the Orianna into the Jace. I'm assuming that normally we see paired with something like the Vi, the Ahri, which was hovered, or the Talia, and the Talia has just been such a dominant mid lane champion for pretty much across all levels of play, not only because it's a great combo with Vi, but also you have so much global pressure. But, I think in Bradley's perspective here, Orianna is going to give him a little bit of extra trading ability into the Jace, which we know can be, quite oppressive during the laning phase. But also, like you said, having a ball being dropped into bushes adds like an extra layer of awareness checks that Fisher College have to go through if they haven't been playing against an Orianna that often recently.
Yeah. Just to keep everybody on in an update, we are having a slight delay getting into game. Tournament officials are trying to figure out some things on the back end for Fisher, so we'll let you know as soon as that is updated. But coming into this, we kind of talked about the draft now. I think that still looking at some of these players for UST, there's so much history and I think prestige for a program that despite their young age when it comes to when this program was founded compared to some of the other ones that are playing in this tournament,
Hmm.
have a pretty high pedigree. 2022, they come in and win the entire thing with Shogo. 2023, they're able to make the back-to-back and end up getting two champions, kind of supplanting some other really big champions that have played here in the collegiate team. And then only making third, eventually with SLU winning last year's collegiate championship. I think that with only two members who are currently playing, Nova and Porsche, being part of that roster that ended up winning, I think they have a large burden, especially as it being the final year for this program, to kind of do a deep run and make it all the way and potentially challenge a team like Maryville.
Yeah, we said it at the top of the show for anyone that missed it, but this is essentially St. Thomas's swan song in the collegiate scene. Afterwards, this program will really not be a thing anymore, to our knowledge, but because Nova was one of the original members that helped create the program in its infancy and, really brought it to the forefront as early as 2021. It is cool that Array is able to return to this collegiate roster after being part of
Yeah.
the very first roster back in 2021, where we got to see their first matches in Gateway Legends. For anyone remembering, St. Louis ballpark, and being in St. Louis in general, that's such a fun core memory for me, as well as I imagine many other teams and students there. This is a team and a program that has, even though hasn't lasted that long in terms of the collegiate space compared to, other legacy collegiate programs like Maryville University, it definitely made such a huge impact on the map very rapidly. And, it is sad that it's going to be leaving the space, at the end of this year. And so you can't help but, hope the very best for St. Thomas. But on the flip side, Fisher
Yeah.
College, even though they're not entering a swan song, they still have a lot to prove. And this is a program that has yet to win a CLOL title for themselves, even though being, in spiritual succession to Bay State College, at least being very close to doing so.
And also, I just think about how new this Fisher program is. The fact that they take over for Bay State in a lot of ways in 2023. They make a top 8 run. A lot of teams historically have barely made it out of 32, much less 16. And as a new program, being able to make it into top 8 and at the very least have 2 years in a row where you've kind of made that cutoff, very impressive stuff nonetheless. And finally they have a new roster, right? Like they have some pieces. I know that some of them are still sitting on the bench, but the fact that they've kind of let this new roster slide in, kind of play their season, develop themselves. You still have Drake at the helm for Fisher.
Yeah.
I think that there's so much crossover and hopefully a kind of a changing of the guard for this program going forward. And it does start with that mid jungle, right? With Wyena and Brunes coming over from EMEA, previously had played together, and so hopefully this dynamic duo can bring them further into this series as we are still waiting for the technical delay for the game to start.
Yep. Some wrong runes were selected here, so just making sure that everyone is starting off on the right foot. Getting an update that it should be starting relatively soon. So thank you everyone at home for your patience, as
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure that everyone is playing optimally and on their best footing, so that there's no Jones, there's no Johns, going into these games here.
Yeah,
But game two,
I mean, after that first game, I think Wyena might need a couple of them. Your jungler is in my lane, man. Your support's in my lane. Get the hell out of here, okay? I'm trying to win the 1v1.
help me, help, please. And to be fair, Brunes tried to definitely do his best to heavy lift the early game. I still get some chuckles from seeing Kenvi being chased around the entire bot side of the
Oh
map
yeah.
for what seemed like 45 seconds, and then even preempting the dive as well. Magi almost getting super low, and then Bruness finally taking down the Kenvi. But you know, it was a great cost giving over a shutdown bounty. But you know, the pass is the pass. Game 2 should
Yeah.
be coming your way soon, folks.
So, you know, we can while we're waiting, we can do some house cleaning here. Again, we're in top 5 lower quarterfinals. Winner of this actually plays for a top 3 spot up against Winthrop next week, which I think is a very big change. Obviously, we talked about with these teams being in the lower bracket, the fact that it is 3 series away from being able to make it to Raleigh, being able to play on LAN in person. There's a lot on the line. It takes a lot. Again, they've already had to play a best of 5 yesterday. Both of these teams, obviously UST ended up winning theirs, but then you have to play another 2 best of 5s next week back to back if you want any chance of making it to the finals. And right now, who is left in the tournament? We've got the 1st through 4th seeded Maryville, Ole Miss, UST, and Fisher, and then Winthrop. Surprisingly enough, even as a 6th seed, I think some people saw them getting to this point in the tournament, but they dropped into that lower bracket very early on.
And Winthrop University have been doing their best to stay alive as long as possible. You know, dropping into the lower bracket early on, for the most part, usually means that your competition throughout will not be, you know, some of the heavy hitters that stayed alive in the upper bracket. But I think it also just speaks to the tenaciousness of Winthrop University. I know this isn't their matchup that we're talking about, but, you know, while we have the time, while we're loading into game 2, well, just make a quick point. Winthrop has been playing a ton of games, not just here in CLOL, but across multiple leagues. And, you know, the fact that they've been able to still make it all the way here is pretty remarkable. But obviously, we'll get a chance to see how well they can do against the eventual winner of this series as we head on to the Rift for Game 2 between Fisher College and St. Thomas.
You've got to, I mean, look, we talked about them playing a lot of games. Hell, the reason why we even started the series late is because Fisher College was playing their Playfly Grand Finals. So, makes a lot of sense. Collegiate, there's a lot of games to play, a lot of LANs that are happening. I know that the CECC is still going on over in Arlington, or is wrapping up their stuff. So much going on across the space as... Thank you, Yayo. Thank you for your performance as we get a pretty boring 5-point start here. UST were stacking on a brush to see if Fisher would walk up.
I love this skin, bro. When Samsung Galaxy won in Season 7, and then Kube picked this and just made him look like a white tiger, oh, peak. Definitely one of my favorite skins to use.
I think for the Samsung white ones, I actually ended up, because I went to MSI in 2015, and
yeah,
I don't know if they still do this with physical tickets, but you used to be able to take your physical ticket and redeem it in the store, and for MSI 2015, you got to pick any of the world skins. So I chose Samsung White Thresh.
Oh, Mata, yeah. That was a cool one back in the day. I think, unfortunately, some of the world skins have... I don't want to say they haven't aged well, but unless if they have, like, you know, certain cool animations on them, or whether it's in the recall or, like, other things, they get overshadowed by other skins. But meanwhile, we are into the laning phase, and things are getting pretty volatile, so we'll have to table the world skin discussion for another time, as already Magi is forced to... Okay, not necessarily needing to use a pot, but he is chugging a pot here. I think Nova was also chugging a pot as well. So both supports already feeling the brunt of the sustained war.
Unless he has biscuits. I guess we'll have to see. We'll see in a few minutes if he gets another biscuit here from Nova. Otherwise, I think it's fine for the most part. See that Magi and Brabro getting a little bit of chip work in Fisher College. Bruness is moving up towards the top side. Don't expect there to be a gank onto the Scion early, but maybe there's a drive-by in mid as Wyena should have early chip damage down onto Bradley, while on the opposite side, Kenvi going for a full clear on the bottom side. I think Wyena's a bit far up, though, so maybe looking for something. Wyena's is dying. Hello?
Wyena is super low, and I think that's why Kenvi has adapted his pathing. He's dropping the 2 camps, looking already. You see Flash off screen, but Wyena was able to just walk away safely. Meanwhile, action continuing on to the bot side. Magi now under fire with the Ignite, burning him down. Mystic Shot is going to get blocked by Brabro, so at least his Nautilus is safe and not forced to use any summoner spells here. But Kenvi continuing the dive, still doesn't have flash, so now Wayena can flash that one, and Bruness is here for the counter, and Bradley just cannot reconnect with his jungler because he's 2-4. That's first blood for Fisher College.
This is such an overforce. You still have camps on the bottom side of the map, and now, not only have you given over an assist, you've now let Lilia continue her jungle pathing, potentially go for even more, as we do see that she is setting up on the top side here. That was both flashes spent from the mid-jungle of Fisher College, and Kenvi getting punished yet again here in an early game situation.
And now Bruness had the freedom to look for a topside play. Doesn't find a successful dive, but maybe a little bit of chip damage onto Porsche's health bar here, while Yayo is able to safely get this last wave in before he looks for a reset. But yeah, Kenvi had camps to do. You already burned your flash and got nothing for it. Definitely seemed like an overforce there, and not respecting where Bruness could have been on the map. And you know that Bradley, really hard for him to be able to follow up when it's through that one choke point. We're going to have to see if St. Thomas's jungler can... Don't get me wrong, I love it when junglers play proactive. Gotta know limits, though, and know when a play is just no longer feasible.
That first time we saw him in mid, or that we saw on the minimap, where Kenvi is like just walking up and pressing flash, I'm like, you are nowhere near this Jace. So what exactly are we cooking up over here? But Kenvi now 2 games in a row where he tries to make a level 3 play in one of his solo lanes. And I mean, now we're getting the swap away from the dragon here. Nova is going to be able to at least move on over towards this objective, so it'll still be a 4-on-4, but I'm looking at this from the side of Fisher. No ultimates coming out quite yet from UST. I think I favor a lot of this for Fisher.
Already a decent amount of damage onto Kenvi's health bar, and the fact that Wayena is able to rotate first, Nova is forced to flash over the wall. Bradley cannot join the fight. St. Thomas just have no business trying to defend that camp.
I mean, it's just Lilia, right? Like, we don't have any crowd control or any reasonable amount of damage. Lilia just takes over in that kind of space, gets to take away Kenvi's Raptors and his respawn Krug. So this feels very good for what was a jungler that we had a lot of high hopes for coming into game number 1 and the rest of this series. He's starting to put his stamp very early on into this game.
Yeah, Bruness really living up to the Lilia dream right now. Obviously, it's super early into the game, but at this pace, being able to snowball. Meanwhile, bot side River, the collapse onto Wayena, being able to at least follow through and make the punish now that the Jace did not have flash from the overforce in mid lane.
All right, they're going to continue to crash. Wait, they're going to kill Yayo. Yayo will find that pick onto Array. I still think this is fine from the side. Yayo was already chasing Array. He got him down to quarter HP, and then I just eventually was able to kind of chase him down. Gets both summoners out from the Ezreal. This is going to be 3 grubs going over to Fisher. A trade of the dragon, at least for now. 6 minutes into the game, finally. First dragon is not going to have an extended amount of life here in this second game. Bruness is very far ahead, I think.
I mean, he's already level 6, setting up the sleep onto Bradley. Oh, he was trying to be fancy. Bruness looking for the Eep flash prediction out of Bradley. But Bradley's just like, yeah, I'm not flashing anything until the very bitter end, and then uses it after all the spells have been used.
All right, so this will be some alone time. Bruness did decide to spend his timer there and not finish the grubs, instead heading towards mid. Does mean that Wayena should have time to be able to hit this turret and get waves in underneath. Bradley with no teleport is probably going to miss out on at least 1 minion wave in mid. So trying to equalize the balance in this lane, as Wayena still struggling here in game number 2. And there's not many other places that Fisher really have going for them in the time being. It's a free lane for the Snar, and Bruness has started to pick up some steam on this Lilia, but still a lot of work to be done from this blue side team.
Yeah, but it's a good start, and if they can continue this pace where Kenvi is not able to find a lot of these early snowball setups for the Vi, I mean, this Lilia is going to just take over the game and definitely feel a lot more threatening on the map than this Vi. But it doesn't mean that the rest of St. Thomas's roster can't do anything about it. This Vi will still always be useful no matter how late the game goes. You have a point-and-click suppression button, or guarantee that you're going to have lockdown onto one priority target. And if Lilia is the only person that is supercharged and super fed, then that just means the Lilia is going to be ulted every single time.
Trying to take a look here. There's not much of a play. Again, those first grubs still up and available, so there's only one left in the pit. Without it respawning, I think it ends up cutting out a lot of the potential playmaking here for Fisher. They would love to be able to finish this, call up the second spawn. Also would give them a feat of epic monster slaying, at least a tick towards that. So they're going to finish it finally here at almost 9 minutes. Good chunk coming out from Magi and Brabro. What we expect from this Corki and Nautilus early on.
Array and Nova on the back foot a little bit for now. At least able to keep up his CS score, though, in that department. Brabro trying to basically rush the same items as Array wants to at this game. So both the Corki and Ezreal operating on similar power spikes, but with a little bit of priority that this Nautilus offers with proactive engages in the CC. Gonna try to look for Array here, force an Arcane Shift. That's a nice cooldown that you can expend. Now, potential dive onto the top side. Kenvi is on the other side of the wall, looks for the cease and desist, but Porsche doesn't look like he had the CC available yet. Gets the dismembering smash on the Yayo, but Bruness is the target that they wanted, and they cannot lock this Lilia down.
All right, the Falcons are able to strike. They get themselves a feat of warfare. Wyena and Bradley fighting. If he gets one more spell rotation, I think Wyena can win this. Flash? Oh!
I guess Wyena was trying to flash a particular ability or get back in range of
flashing
being
over
in
the Q.
melee.
He's just flashing over the Orianna Q, but he just... All right, Yayo gets
Meanwhile,
a solo
kill. All right, well, it's a trade. Shutdown bounty happens to go over to Porsche for that, so I think if you're the sign, you're definitely content. Yayo at least being able to pick up his Triforce off of the gold from the kill. So this Lilia has hit her first item in Leandries. That's strong. Trinity Force is also strong for the Gnar. No one else on the other side of the team for St. Thomas is close to it at this point. Maybe Bradley will be the first one to hit his Ludens with what he is building between the Lost Chapter and the Hextech Alternator, right? But right now, Fisher College should feel empowered to make a lot more proactive plays through the top side of the map, wherever Yayo and Bruness are.
And usually you would think that they would want to move them over, but Dragon spawning in a minute. UST are the first ones to the play, so they're going to be able to get at least some of their vision down. I'm just looking at the growing black hole that is this mid lane right now, because Wyena is getting gapped. 30 CS down in a matchup where Jace early on should be trying to take advantage of the Ori. And Bradley's getting even closer to level 11 at this point, so he's basically almost a level and a half up on his opponent. I think this is a massive point of weakness for Fisher, and I'm glad that UST are leaning on the strength of their mid lane play, and I think it's opening up so much more in this game and keeping them very competitive here.
Yayo going in onto Porsche because he has yet to finish a first item on this Scion. This is a very squishy, very weak Scion that Yayo can just easily bully around. And even with Kenvi hovering towards that top side of the map, he can't finish off Yayo by himself. He's level 8 to a level 10 Gnar.
Oh, we're seeing the dive here.
Maybe Sleep goes right onto Array. He flashes the Eep. Now trying to look for Brabro. Array able to dodge and dash away from all of that danger here. St. Thomas send in the Avengers with Bradley TPing, and the rest of Fisher College are forced to call the TP off.
Okay, so they get Bradley's TP. I still think this is worthwhile, though, for Fisher. Yes, they lose out on Brabro, but this is gold going on to Wyena. This bottom lane as well. Okay, this is where it maybe doesn't get very worth for them.
Magi was there waiting. Bruness also waiting in the wings. Maybe Bradley can save him. Shockwave pulls it right back in. Bruness will go down to the turn shot despite taking out Kenvi on the backside. That's another shutdown bounty, and it's into Bradley's pockets.
But the new mid laner here, there are big shoes to fill. You're coming in for Robbie Bob, of course, for St. Thomas. Bradley is getting so much gold. Yet again, he gets that shutdown onto Bruness. He gets multiple of those kills onto the Corki, now onto Bruness. what else is there that Bradley cannot do in this series so far? He is getting completely put forward in this game, and he is also winning the matchup versus Wyena this time around, again, without any jungle assistance. So some small missteps coming in from UST is getting saved by their new mid laner.
Yeah, St. Thomas are pretty much all eggs in the Bradley basket at the moment. Obviously, Array isn't necessarily a point of weakness this game. He has the one death, but that's because Fisher College have invested a lot of resources into trying to shut him down, but it really is Bradley that is super accelerated into this game. There was a chance to try and take this dragon on St. Thomas's side, but with the teleports coming in, it has now been leashed over successfully to Fisher College, and they'll find their first dragon of this second game.
All right. They're able to at least delay any kind of soul stacking conversation we would have had for UST if they're able to grab that. Seeing the teleport come out, it's a lot better of a... I don't think this is going to be a much better matchup. Yes, he has a completed Spear of Shojin, whereas Porsche still has that garage sale of inventory. But still, the Sion should have enough HP early on that this is mostly just going to be a... Let's see if we can get Wyena back into the game type of scenario. We have second set of grubs. Bruness finishing his bottom side camps. His bot lane is recalling. We're seeing everybody start to make their way into this top side. And with Hextech gates getting around the map that much quicker, so we might see a lot more action sooner than we were expecting.
Yeah, I think it was very smart for Bruness to go for Merc Treads this game. Might even have to invest into a little bit more magic resist depending on how long this game goes, because when you're looking at what St. Thomas have on their side and who's currently strong, I mean, we've already discussed that Bradley is the biggest man on the Rift right now. 6 stacks on that Dark Seal as well. He is relatively close to finishing his second item. I'm not sure if it's going to be a Death Cap or if it's going to be a Shadow Flame, but this is such a scary Orianna, and the burst that will come from a full combo, you're definitely going to need not just HP, but also a little bit of resistances in the magic resist department.
And look what they're doing. They're just playing to wherever Bradley wants to be able to go, which is going to be on this bottom side. Leona and Kenvi in the shadows here, making sure that this can go through. 6 grubs going over to Fisher, and they grab themselves the first turret. I think you're not too mad about that. Feats of Strength now completed for the Falcons. Wyena has to just give up this entire wave just to make sure that he doesn't get focused down. But Fisher are making some progress on the opposite side of the map. Again, taking that top tier 1 and constantly getting pushed thanks to Brabro and Magi.
Yep. And just continuing to play to the priority of this Gnar, who is, you know, quite ahead of the Sion. The Sion has still yet to finish their first item of the game until just now, being able to complete the Titanic Hydra. Had opted in for the Boots of Swiftness just because he needed the extra movement speed and the slow resistance to evade all of the harass and poke that Yayo was putting him with in range form, in mini Gnar form. Now, Fisher College, knowing that the Rift Herald has spawned, are trying to shift their attention over to it. They have Yayo on this side of the map again. He's not anywhere close to Mega form, but meanwhile, Brabro just gets caught out. I know it was just a quick pull, snap of the trigger. Kenvi easily able to use the cease and desist there, but now he's in trouble against Yayo, being flown into the wall thanks to the power of Mega Gnar. So at least Fisher College, Brabro, yeah, you went down, but your sacrifice was not in vain.
He just steps way too far forward. No one else is in the area. Good snap coming in from UST, but this is now Bruness starting to pick up more. Yes, he didn't get that kill onto Kenvi, but he was able to grab the Respawn Raptors again. Now he has access to the Rift Herald, and they already have 6 grubs. This map state can get very difficult for UST to deal with. It is just Bradley, but in a similar fashion to what we said in game number 1, it is a top lane versus mid lane bout. Yayo having so much of the gold this game alongside his jungle, whereas for the side of St. Thomas, it is just Bradley kind of having to carry the torch for this team. Now with the Rift Herald in their back pocket, have to imagine that Fisher, they can take any of these mid lane tier 1 turrets here. And with Dragon spawning in a minute's time, maybe there's a play there. Maybe that's going to be their sequence.
Yeah. I like the fact that St. Thomas still trying to leverage Bradley's advantage by, in that moment, they knew there's no way they're going to be able to contest the Rift Herald. So they said, okay, you know what, just kill this wave and try and play for this mid-tier 1 while they are distracted with the Rift Herald. And so St. Thomas looking for as many optimal trades while losing probably the the bigger objectives that they would like to prioritize just to ensure that they're not falling too far behind, which is why you still see that the gold lead is pretty much dead even, if not just barely under 1,000 advantage for Fisher College.
Right, so we're seeing some posturing around the mid lane wave. Dragon is spawning. Scion off in the wings somewhere. Magi goes forward.
Oh, and Magi just gets blown up there. Shockwave follows right on top of Brabro, and now it's up to Waena and Yayo to try and carry the damage through, since Bruness has retreated back to the safety of that red quadrant jungle. But they lose 2 in a blink of an eye, and St. Thomas have still 5 versus 3. There's no way they can compete for this dragon.
That Nautilus hook landing into the wall right there just kind of sent it for Fisher. Maybe the start of the dragon here. Bruness, I don't think he's going to make any heroics. Probably just going to look for his second item here. Waena, maybe with an accelerated shock blast of doom. But they're going to push their waves here from the side of St. Thomas. Back to mid lane goes the bottom lane duo of Array and Nova. And if you're wondering, hey, this Nova guy, you know, he's got some schmoves here. He's supposed to be the coach and director for this team. Had some last-minute swaps in terms of personnel, but if you know anything about St. Thomas in this roster, you know that Nova, for a long time, has made some substitute appearances. So good to see him still playing, and good for him to potentially continue their bout here as the final year of this program, moving on forward and leading his team from the front.
Yeah. In dire circumstances, sometimes Nova has to step in and still be as useful and reliable for the team as possible. The rest of St. Thomas have been able to make it work so far. Rift Herald only secures 1 as Kenvi tries to stop the Rift Herald. Meanwhile, it is a flank from Porsche with the TP engage. Right on top of Magi. Once again, the Nautilus is eviscerated from the Rift. And St. Thomas guarantee a numbers advantage for the next 30 seconds.
Do they go for Otacon here? You see that Herald was spawned in bottom lane. Didn't even get a turret here. Didn't get the full turret in the bottom lane. They try to make this pick onto Waena.
Cease and desist still available. Kenvi doesn't want to use it quite yet. Was just trying to see how much damage they could get. It's a lot of poke from Array and Bradley. Or not Bradley, just Kenvi and Array trying to do the work as much as possible. A blue buff steal potentially. Bruness hiding on the other side of the wall here. Eep should be able to secure it. Blue goes to the side of Fisher College as Bradley finally gets a chance to push in the wave and now make his way through. Vault Breaker Q flash looks for Bruness, but that's a flash out of the Lilia now. Death Charge. Magi has rejoined the party. Kenvi super low, burning down to what looks like Leandry. He's able to walk out alive, and the rest of Fisher College brute force St. Thomas away.
If they can actually continue to push here, if they get more eyes, I know that they're looking for a pick. Maybe Yayo finds Kenvi. That could be the Otacon started. Okay.
Oh boy, Yayo being able to get a massive value off the TP, just catching Kenvi being a little too greedy, thinking that he was safe. Massive shockwave though, a lot of damage onto Yayo, forcing him to flash while he was still in mini form. Now is Mega, a little bit beefier, a little bit more durable, but I think it's enough that Fisher College do not feel confident in taking the Otacon.
I'm going to assume they have second items here. Alright, Leandry's and Riftmaker done for Bruness. That was also the flash from Yayo. So Kenvi trying to fish a little bit here for the side of St. Thomas. We saw them in that topside jungle, maybe fishing for a steal. Weren't able to force much onto Bruness. And, you know, this game has slowed down. And, again, all of this gold for UST is in Bradley. But aside from that, Yayo has a pretty big individual advantage. Bruness, 60 CS over Kenvi on this Lilia. And Waena, you're just going to have to be playing Jace from range, brother. I think you are a movement speed bot. You're going to be giving us acceleration gate and doing a little bit of poke for us as the side of Fisher College. But I think they're fine with where this game is at. This is still looking very good for them. And if they ever get that shutdown onto Bradley, evens things up and eventually throws it in their favor.
Solar Flare looking for Waena and Bruness since there's no flash on the Lilia, but doesn't really find the mark for St. Thomas to feel confident on following up on the engage. So Solar Flare, non-committal engage. Beauty of that is if you don't like it, you don't have to play for it, and St. Thomas just back away.
So St. Thomas are now in the situation, 6 grubs here for Fisher. Yayo so far ahead that they always need to be able to group where Fisher is, and they need to be able to win these 4v4s if they want any chance in this. Otacon's going to get started up. The Farsight alteration is going to get spotted. So they'll know that Fisher is on this objective, and walking in blind with no Leona ult here, gonna have to see if UST can get that good damage down.
Good use of the ball at least guarantees them vision to walk through that tri-bush choke point, and the rest of Fisher College immediately back off. Yayo is almost at Mega form, was waiting, looking for an angle where he could proc Mega and just find a massive Mega Gnar ulti. Unfortunately, the window has passed. The rest of St. Thomas are able to get their way through that choke point, now kind of in the open river and topside. Playing for the tier 1, Magi tries to look for the dredge line. Yayo about to go Mega here. Where's the target that he wants to look for? Doesn't have flash, pops the Mega, a little too far away from the rest of the group now. Rest of Fisher College trying to pour their way into the river as Bruness is keeping the Otacon leashed, and Yayo is sending boulders over the wall, just poking at the side of St. Thomas. It is still a tricky scenario, but Bradley still has Shockwave.
Yeah.
He's still healthy enough until he takes a shock place to the face. That is pretty nice from the side of Wayena.
Okay.
7,000 HP now on the Otacon. Kenvi waiting in the shadows to see if he can look for a steal. Bradley still can't walk up unless someone else does it for him. They force Bruness away. The smite is secured by Kenvi. Wayena sends it on to Bradley and gets a massive shutdown onto the Orianna. I don't think Shockwave was used there. Now all the damage has to come down to Array, but he is just too far away. Cannot get into the fight safely, and Fisher College will pick up all the blood roses.
I thought with Yayo getting out of Mega Gnar, that could have been the spot for UST, but they don't have enough damage. Kind of like in Game 1, they're missing out. If they're kind of wishing that they had that Azir again to be able to deal more damage. The Otacon is stolen by UST, so they'll get some more epic monster rewards from the 2 dragons they get, but Fisher College, I think, come out with the bigger reward, still have those grubs. Now they're able to get turret damage on this top lane tier 2 as well, and they got a lot of those kills. That shutdown, especially going off of Bradley. They weren't prepared for that fight. That damage is just not there for them. Missing a large portion of it. They're making a pretty long play onto Yayo.
Yeah, he's not getting out anytime soon. Tries to leap forward to Array, but it is a big shutdown going over to the Ezreal's pockets. St. Thomas have to remind themselves that, yeah, you have a front line, but you need to make sure that your back line is able to walk up safely to there. And there is just it seems like there is either miscommunication or just a real difficult standoff where Bradley had been chunked out by Wayena on the Jace. And it was probably, you know, one of the biggest moments that the mid laner for Fisher College was able to find there for himself. Despite, you know, the early laning phase woes, he's been able to catch up on farm relative to Bradley, and he was able to pressure him.
They don't know
now
this is happening.
St. Thomas ripping the Baron once again, pretty much on spawn, and just catching Fisher College by surprise, as you called it, Dimitri. They have no idea.
Okay, but look at the waves right now, pushing in mid, pushing in bot in favor of Fisher. How much can UST get done in the next 2.5 minutes? It's good. It kind of gives them some avenues to play. Maybe they try to find something onto Wayena here. He's just taken out on the side lane. He tried to walk into his topside jungle thinking maybe they would have recalled, maybe they were going to show on mid. So now there's a numbers advantage. Yayo grouping with his team, all 4 of them in this mid lane.
Looking for Porsche, already tried to use the ultimate to escape, but he was cut off. Q flash from Bruness, looking for the lilting lullaby right onto Array, but he's able to get over to the wall to safety. Nova's in there. Mega Gnar throws both of them into the wall, and now Kenvi's in trouble. Bradley still has a shockwave. Can he find the 3k elo one to find them all? But he doesn't even need it so far because Kenvi has survived the onslaught. They found Bruness in the fight, despite the massive counter engage that Fisher College made, and Yayo's the only one left standing.
Yayo barely is able to limp out of that fight. 4 kills now going over to UST. What is up with these early games for UST? They're kind of all over the place. Fisher gets 6 scrubs. They win another fight. They win the Otacon. But then after the Baron, maybe it's just the purple capes or whatever, but UST come out with a huge win. They find that pick onto Wayena, and then here, there's so much mobility. Look at where all the damage dealers are from the side of UST. They're standing off. There's no chance that Bradley's going to be here for this fight, but from the side of Fisher, all over the place. Bruness not able to kind of utilize some of that lilting lullaby, and this quickly evens up the game here for UST, despite a lot of the good work that Fisher had done in the first 20 minutes.
I didn't even see how precise Array was with his skill shots, as we're back to live here. Bruness under fire, but the shockwave definitely found all of Fisher College in that choke point. Yayo forced to flash away, but Bradley wants to send him another command attack as he will look for one more dissonance. Bam, down goes the Gnar, and it's just down to Wayne on the Jace in a 1v5 defense of the base, and this just could be St. Thomas taking us to match point.
Bradley with an unofficial quadra kill here. He has gotten the better of his mid lane counterpart, and he is doing so again, bringing UST to match point here.
55,000 gold to 49,000. It definitely looked like a dead even game, but somehow when St. Thomas gets the Baron buff, everything just comes together nicely. They're going to pad the KDA stats a little bit before ending the game, but ladies and gentlemen, St. Thomas are up on match point.
And in just a great matchup, I think when we look at this team right now, Bradley is playing on another level. We talk about, just his experience, the wealth of kind of time that this guy has been able to play. I know that right now he's kind of splitting his time, being able to play not only here in CLOL, but also playing in the LATAM region, Tier 2. I think he's playing for SD High School. It's a pretty fun kind of, it's him and Baula, another famous support coming on through. So he is really trying to make this grind. He's been on those solo queue boot camps over in Korea, and he is honestly putting on a performance. We've had some games where I think Bradley hasn't really been able to live up to some of that legacy that he's had on other teams, but here in this series today, he is on fire.
I mean, when we first heard about Bradley coming up through the Tier 3 scene, old heads are going to remember CP Freeze, from the early days of 2021, and maybe even 2020 if you go far enough into some of those amateur rosters. But ever since he finally changed his name to Bradley and made his way onto the wildcard roster, the Bethany Lutheran College roster in 2021, he was probably the only big shining point that a lot of collegiate teams were starting to look at afterwards. A lot of teams in Tier 2 were looking at Bradley going, wow, this guy is insane. And even though he went through a stint of role swapping the top lane so that he could get an academy spot, since academy mids were feeling saturated and prioritizing import mids over, Bradley takes his journey into top lane and says, yeah, you know what, I'm going to do what I need to do to be on a winning roster and learn what I can. But, after his stint with Team Liquid, he's been playing mid lane back ever since. And I think, Bradley is continuing to show why he's still one of the best mid laners we've got in this space.
He's performing rather well. So I'm excited to see what else we get from UST. And for Fisher, kind of being able to patch it together. Bruness had a good game. Yayo had a good game, but the rest of the team kind of really falling apart. And this was the point in the series for St. Clair where we were saying, okay, that should just be the series. We're done and dusted. Let's we're getting ready for a 3-0. Let's kind of send it on out. We finally got a performance from Wayena and Bruness. I think that's what fans at home are hoping for if they want any chance in this series. As now, again, match point here for UST, looking to make a bye into top 4.
Yep, we're going to be taking a short break, but when we come back, it is Game 3, match point on the line for St. Thomas. We're going to see how it all unfolds. See you in a short bit. Welcome back, gamers. We're getting ready for Game 3 between University of St. Thomas and Fisher College. St. Thomas are currently up match point here in our lower bracket quarterfinal. So one more game means that they clinch their spot against Winthrop University, and it puts them one series closer to that spot in grand finals, a trip to North Carolina to face the winner of Maryville University and Ole Miss.
An insanely prestigious event, especially just every single year. When we talk about collegiate championships, everybody is talking about when can we go to LAN? When can I meet these guys in person? When can we play in, some kind of arena, some kind of stage, just so they can have that moment in the spotlight and being able to win and hoist that trophy. Here for game number 3, match point for ST, we find Fisher yet again on the blue side, and bans already looking the same as we got from game number 2. The Azir, the Lucian coming out from Fisher, and we have to imagine Gwen and Nefiri and the Varus from the side of St. Thomas.
I am definitely in that boat with you, and the fact that they let the Jace go through and they were not punished with that ban, I wouldn't change anything if I were St. Thomas, to be honest. So, whereas Fisher College, if they return to the same bans, this last one that they did was the Karma, they're going to do it again. They don't want to deal with that bot lane priority that would come out. So, but what changes for Fisher College this time around? I don't know if you... I mean, you could look for the Jace, but this time, instead of sending it mid lane, you send it top lane instead for Yayo and see if he's able to have a better time with it. Otherwise, maybe do you slam the Vi? Do you need to be a little bit more proactive with Bruness here? What is the change?
The parts of Fisher that have been impressive so far in this series is their top jungle. So we're going to see them choose this Jace. The issue that I have is I think St. Thomas can just go ahead and do the same thing we just saw them do in the previous games, which is pick up Vi, pick up Ezreal here for Array, and make it so that any kind of chance that there's a skirmish in bottom lane, there's that chance that Array can be by himself. Also, you could just slam Sion on 3. So I think you're under very little threat from the side of St. Thomas if you see what Porsche has been able to do in this series and what Yayo and Bruness haven't necessarily been able to accomplish so far in these last 2 games. As we get now a potential of the Corki and the Pantheon, which gives Kenvi more aggressive looks, but that just means we're going to get, you know, the same things that we've got in the first 2 games where Kenvi's looking for a level 3 gank and they haven't all been working out.
But you know what? Maybe this time it will be the cleanest execution because Pantheon just looks a tad bit more cooler than the other 2 champions. Maybe you just got to play the Pantheon theme music like Kangas does whenever he's playing this champion. However, if you're playing it like Kangas, then something has gone clearly wrong as well. But for Fisher College, Nidalee, oh boy, if this is actually locked in, I mean, you can't just put a Nidalee game in front of me and not, you know, expect me to be calm. You know, I'm going to be excited. However calm.
They knew you were coming through. They were excited. They said that, like, hey, it's his first time doing some collegiate championships. Let's give him a treat.
All right. Well, I hope this Nidalee can thrive in this game because right now, I'm not going to lie, you at least have a lot of range and you have a lot of poke. So Nidalee kind of fits in that archetype. Playing into Pantheon is a little difficult sometimes because unless he's super low, you never want to jump into the Pantheon. And if you're in auto range of Pantheon, then he's in W range of you. So this matchup can be a little tricky, but if you just focus on power farming and just trying to outpace the Pantheon, you will hit some item breakpoints a little sooner. Meanwhile, I know don't worry. I will try to stop talking about the Nidalee stuff as we get through the rest of the draft. Victor, I'm telling you, man, like, if you let me just go off, I will tell you a whole novel about Nidalee and her power spikes. But Bradley locking in the Victor.
Well, we will talk about it during the game. So
yeah.
we're getting through. I think there's a missed ban, considering UST did get through 2 of theirs, and we don't see that from Fish. I'll get confirmation from our production as to the status of that first ban from the side of Fisher College. But like you were saying, having the range come in from the Jhin and the Nidalee, I think very important, but they need some frontline coming on through if they want this to work. I'm looking at this from St. Thomas. I like the strong laning that the Victor is going to allow you. Corki, the same thing. And Pantheon on a side lane is going to make this Jace's life living hell once you have access to that ultimate.
Global pressure is going to be real, and for the side of Fisher College, they have not necessarily been the fastest in being able to fast collapse or rotate if they're not already in motion doing so. Nautilus being secured from the side of St. Thomas, so guaranteed def charge and point-and-click CC to follow up as a way to start things off is now on their side, whereas the Leona probably being secured here. I have to say, you know, between Nautilus and Leona, both of them are great supports that pair up with Nidalee if you want to have strong gank setup so that you can guarantee spears and at maximizing the early game damage that Nidalee can have even before item spikes or before level 6, but still a solo laner yet to be locked in for Fisher College. And okay, we're gonna send the Jace mid lane again.
All right, we get the confirmation as to where this Nidalee was going. I was maybe holding out hope that Yayo would try to pull out some Nidalee top action here.
Oh my god,
I would have gone their last game. But don't do it to him, Porsche. Don't do it to him. Do not give them Malphite on 5.
I gotta go, bro. Oh no, I gotta go. Oh my goodness, the Malphite.
Oh my god.
Oh no.
Open it up, boys.
Oh, no.
Open up the pit. It's looking quite difficult. They've got strong lanes. It's another setup. We're going to get Rafa back in here. Mark, I mean, we get to talk about the conditions for these two teams. Malphite, again, another weak laner, but when it comes to team fights, is going to have a pretty big impact. And now anytime Nidalee or Jace show up on their screen, you got to be thinking there's going to be a Nautilus hook, there's going to be a Pantheon, there's going to be some kind of Malphite coming on through.
I mean, listen, we already know that Yayo has been getting the better of Porsche in these side lanes, but we have yet to see a game where Fisher College are able to leverage that to the point where Porsche feels, completely irrelevant at, past the 20-minute mark. In that past game, Sion getting solo killed on the Gnar, you know what? He still shows up to a fight with a flank, finds the initiation, and is still finding himself useful. And with the Malphite, who only has to worry about Nidalee as the source of magic damage, if I'm Malphite, I don't give a crap at all. I'm building a ton of armor. This Jace is not going to do damage to me. This Jin's not going to do damage to me. I mean, Gnar better bully the heck out of me early on and make it so that I am dirt poor. Otherwise, this Malphite, even if on low economy, is still going to be such a solid front line.
And that has been the case so far throughout the series. 2 games in a row now, we've seen Yayo individually outplay Porsche in the solo lane. The first game was that Gwen versus Gragas. The second time around, it was the Gnar versus the Sion. We'll see what he's able to do in this matchup here. I wonder if there's any kind of bit of tech. I know that into range matchups, we've been seeing a lot of Malphites go for the Arcane Comet in years past. And maybe we kind of tech into some more AP. But this is potentially the final game in this series, a reverse sweep needing to be on the cards if Fisher College and the rest of the Falcons want any chance of continuing their journey here in the Collegiate Championship for 2025. And it starts here.
It does not start here, Dimitri. Look at that.
It does not start here.
We were on the Rift
soon.
Briefly. It starts soon. We'll get an update to see what happens from here. But while we are loading up onto the Rift again, I imagine one of the things that I can now talk about is Nidalee.
Go for it.
And what she wants to accomplish here in the early game. So, as we talked about before, the Nidalee into Pantheon matchup is not as easily winning for Nidalee in terms of skirmishing power, because you just don't want to disrespect ever walking into Pantheon W range. He has a lot of burst damage, he has a lot of ability to scrap, and Nidalee really wants to have Pantheon chunked out first before she commits into Cougar form, otherwise playing at human range form. But the big advantages that Fisher College have for this Nidalee setup is, one, you have guaranteed setup with this Leona. So if you are able to get Magi, oh my goodness, wow, early flash by Nova committed ensures that Jace is now down to flash. That is gonna be a little
not looking
difficult.
good for the Nidalee win conditions.
Nope, because the thing I was gonna say, Dimitri, is you had pushing lanes in every single lane, and you can use that priority to have your laners move with you into collapsing and forcing Kenvi out of the jungle and playing numbers advantage. But if Waena is now down to flash, I think Kenvi is going to beeline to mid lane relatively soon.
Yeah, one of the issues that I think Fisher are going to run into, not only just stylistically with where their composition's at, but also in the mid lane, is that unless Waena, even if he had his flash, was able to keep up to date with Bradley, it all comes down to how he plays these first few minutes, because eventually Bradley on this Victor, he already has a pretty strong laning phase. He's one of the few mages that actually can kind of bully around some of these champions, and we've seen not only Bradley's individual play, but how this matchup ends up going for Waena. I'm a little bit afraid about what happens with mid lane priority throughout this game in particular. So it's about these small trades Waena can find, and Bradley still finding the wins here. Kenvi, if he finds any more lean up into topside, he just gets a flash and that guy's dead.
I mean, if I'm Bruness, I really actually just want to stop by mid lane and give him a heal gank right now, because he is so critically low. And just like that, we talked about it before, Kenvi knows that there's no flash on the Jace. It's an easy flash commit for him for first blood.
Good use of the E just to get a bunch of movement speed. Flashes right onto Waena. So Jace is going to teleport. This will be a free wave here for Bradley. That kill going over to Kenvi, but the assist, I think more importantly, getting some of those Victor bucks so that he gets closer and closer to those evolves. Big win there for UST early in this game. Waena gets a solo back, and Bruness is invading.
And he knows that Kemi doesn't have flash, but this is what I'm talking about. When you commit into the Pantheon, there's a lot of burst damage. Now Bruness has got to navigate his way with the support of Magi on the Leona here. Now he can follow up one more auto attack here on the Nova. That should do it for Brabro, and they find Kemi on the back end of it. And this is what I'm talking about. If Nidalee invades with numbers advantage, you can go for these plays. You can put the pain train down on Array as Bruness sends a spear his way.
All right, so I think we now have had enough empirical data. I think Kenvi going for level 3 ganks ruins the game a lot. The past 2 games, it's gone the way of Fisher. They've gotten the kill, at least even being able to even up the trades when Kenvi looks for them. Here in this third game, yes, he gets the kill onto Wayena, but after that, the follow-through from Fisher College, it's 4 kills coming through. Bradley flashes forward, takes down Jace again, but now Brabro in a great spot here. Bruness as well, being able to steal camps and also get some kills. I don't know if it's enough here for St. Thomas.
Bradley is going to have to lift up the entire world on his shoulders and then some, in order to at least help bridge the early game. But being asked to bridge an early game as a victor, you know, we're definitely hitting some dire straits at this point. Now, Kenvi, while definitely being set behind the pace, is still at least even in levels, even if he's down in gold and overall camps. Bruness still not at a point in the game where he has completely taken over, but this is an accelerated Jhin for Brabro. The early serrated Dirk, looking for that first collector spike, is going to make him quite a lethal force to contend with St. Thomas, and because none of these champions outside of Porsche is going to be building armor anytime soon, Brabro is going to have a lot of lethality on a lot of these squishy members for St. Thomas.
Yeah. So they decided to keep their bottom lane here from the side of UST on this wave. You see that right now, it is the Jhin and Leona taking control of the mid lane. Jason to into Malphite, not that much better than versus this Victor at this point, but just trying to make sure that they can guarantee push in mid and play for these grubs, which I do think that Fisher College would love to have over UST. If UST get any of these grubs, I think that is in a pretty massive indictment now. Play in mid. Bradley, no flash.
Yep, they know that they can make this play happen. The Hex Flash over the wall to guarantee the stun into the spear. And yep, Fisher College even donating the kill over to Wyena's Jace to make sure that he's getting some gold back. Kenvi forcing the stun.
Here comes Porsche.
Porsche is here with the flash. Unstoppable force. Hits the 2-man knockup. Magi is almost blinking on HP. Tries to sidestep the dredge line. Not going to happen. And it's Porsche that relishes in the kill gold.
All right, but they had to drop some waves here, so UST having to play some dirty tactics in this game. Drop another wave top lane. That means that Jhin will have some time. You see that Yayo trying to get this Demolish proc for a plate in this bottom lane tier 1. So making some map movements is UST and trying to equalize some of the gold that was gained. But you see that Fisher, they're not going to skip a beat. They have push in top side still, so why not? Let's try to contest for these early grubs. We kick it to a replay here. This was just, again, a good punish onto the fact that Bradley has no flash, but we can see on the minimap, Porsche's on his way. Nova and Array are on their way to the mid lane, and this sets up a massive pick. If they don't grab this, if they're not able to cut down Nidalee early, I think there is a large potential here for Bruness to be able to carry this game forward for the side of Fisher College.
Yeah, you definitely want to just try and accelerate this game as fast as possible, especially with the composition that you have, because later the game goes on, Victor becomes a problem, Malphite stacking full armor becomes a problem, Nidalee's not going to be able to do enough to overcome it later on into the game, but if you maintain the gold curve and the item lead against a majority of these champions on St. Thomas, then that is when you feel like Thanos as Nidalee, but because of that rotation from St. Thomas, they at least ensure that most of the champions here on the Rift are on item parity. Kenvi, despite not getting the grubs, and Bruness securing it for themselves, they get the first dragon of the game.
Taking a look here, mid lane right now in favor of UST as there's no one really to take control. Wyena could look for a teleport if he really wants to with that spell coming off of cooldown. And I wanted to note some of the items that were in inventory Specifically for Bradley here, looking to go for the Rod of Ages Victor build, which I know we had said that Victor later on is going to be a pretty big menace. I actually personally would really prefer if he just goes for the full poke build. Yes, he will be a little squishier versus this Fisher College team, but I think delaying these spikes and giving Fisher College a larger window of time to complete some of their items and potentially get more objectives is a little worrisome for me on the side of St. Thomas. So we'll see. They've had a knack so far in this series at 25 minutes, just closing this one out. Flash out from Magi, avoids the re-engage from UST, as that was a lot spent just to try to grab that. Array's just dead in the side lane. Plus his flash, and you got 2 ultimates. That's great for Fisher.
Yeah. Bruness was on the way there, but the fact that no assist gold was given over, looks like it was just a confidence booster and the morale necessary for Wayena to feel confident in going for the solo kill onto Array. St. Thomas starting to slip behind now in gold. A while ago, it was just 1,000 gold lead, but now we're hitting the 2,000 gold mark here for Fisher College. This is once again a game where Wayena
Bradley, no!
is starting to feel a lot. Oh, Bradley still has flash. Now using it over the wall, sidestepping the last curtain call bullet. It's crucial there to surviving what could have been another spear look from Bruness on the Nidalee. But right now, Fisher College, this is the best look we have seen from Wayena so far on the Jace. Yes, he has been focused, but he is able to survive and still come back with a lot of early gold for himself. He is still technically down in CS in terms of his race against Bradley, but he's got a shutdown bounty for himself because he is in a good spot financially.
This is also just the best look we've seen from Fisher all series long. Like, their bottom lane is starting to get going. Brabro now actually opting for the Yomu's tech, which we've been seeing across the world for Jhin. And, I mean, you're kind of hitting those first items. Leona's going to have ultimate soon, so Bradley without his flash, same thing with Array. This could be a channel that we see from Fisher College end up kind of utilizing the fact that they're missing summoner spells. And hell, they're still pushing on some of these lanes. I like how Fisher College have been able to play this game. Very aggressive. I think they're playing a little looser in this one. And so we'll see what else we get from the side of Fisher College and the Falcons. They're going to look to continue to push. We have the second set of grubs spawning in a minute, or in about under a minute here. But maybe they're willing to trade, saying, look, we have those first 3. Let's see if we can grab something. Now the teleport from Porsche, they're going to move on over and potentially have a numbers advantage going into this play.
Nova does not find the dredge line onto the Biddy Nar here. Yayo able to walk it out safely. Kenvi is still waiting in the shadows here, hovering in the river and escorting Nova. Now he's going to find himself into Wayena, and Bruness now making the fast collapse here. They don't have that much damage. Bradley, with a Rod of Ages, who is not even fully stacked up yet, not going to do enough to force Fisher College away, as Kenvi takes a lot of poke damage on the way out.
Oh, Malphite engage in mid. Brabro? He's just dead?
Brabro, super low. Oh, 2v1. They get the shutdown. Man, Porsche is going to get super fed this game. Already a Sunfire Cape and 2 shutdown bounties picked up for himself. But Array, no flash from the encounter on the bot side of the map when he was dueling Wayena. Now Porsche could be in trouble, but thankfully he's very beefy, very durable, able to just sidestep a lot of the damage here. And Kenvi trying to keep himself sustained to see if they can try and contest for these grubs, but that doesn't seem the case. I think it's just going to be another 6 grubs unless St. Thomas now trying to walk in.
Ooh. Okay, so Nova can flash over this wall. He'll have the ultimate. They still have Kenvi available with the Grand Starfall. You see this damage coming in from Bradley. There is no Meganar yet for Yayo. All right, it's just going to be 4 grubs going over to the side of Fisher College. Instead, go back to their lanes, get back into position. Let's get to farm. Let's spend some of our gold here. You see that? I think UST recognizing where this game is.
Oh,
okay.
I don't.
Yayo.
Huh.
Yayo falls. It's alone time here for Bradley. I think it's an okay timer. The fact that they're probably not going to be contesting for the Dragon. Let's just use Kenvi. He's going to also be able to have much better global control, again, with his ultimate. So, just a good pick, I think, finding onto Yayo and some alone time for Bradley in this turret.
Yeah. I guess benefit of the doubt, Yayo's not able to see what was in the Fog of War, but unfortunately is going to get punished for staying a little too long on that top side. Wayena, as you called out, getting some pressure down onto the bot side turret. Plate still available for another minute's time. Porsche Did you see that shock blast? How it did absolutely no damage to Porsche? Yeah, he's going to initiate with that unstoppable force right onto Bruness, and Wayna can be able to follow up. Unfortunately, while he's super tanky and has great initiation, he's going to need a little bit more damage to follow up than just Kenvi on this Pantheon. But already we're starting to see this Malphite that has been accelerated, picking up a lot of the bounties early on, starting to pay off as essentially this unstoppable force, no pun intended.
So they use 2 ultimates for that play. Barely force out anything from the side of Fisher College. It does get the teleport out from Yayo. So another wave that Fisher College are going to be missing. And one of the ways that we saw UST continue to find wins in this series was just put Bradley in a side lane. He's by himself. He has his flashback up and available. No one is matching him again. Missing gold and missing an opportunity to really keep Bradley in check here. Might come to bite Fisher College. We're still waiting for that Rod of Ages to finish. A second item doesn't seem like it is anywhere near in completion, but I'm looking at this from the side of Fisher College, and hey, they've got some strong first items coming through, and Wyena's almost done with it. He's about 2/3 of the way through a Muramana here, so I think feeling okay with their spot in this game, especially with 4 grubs and being able to grab themselves a dragon.
Yeah, unfortunately for him, he's going to need either a Black Cleaver third or a Serelda's Grudge third, just so that he can help Robro push or punch through this Malphite that is going to be on 2 items by the time we get to that point in the game, if not more. And for St. Thomas, 7 minutes left, or 6 minutes left on this Rod of Ages for Bradley, so we're looking at a 20-minute, 21-minute timer where St. Thomas, having a majority of their carries on 2 items, going to feel really strong for themselves. And while Fisher College was starting to snowball and accelerate a lead for themselves, that gold lead has dipped down below 2,000 again. It hasn't grown, and Fisher College need to start playing loose once again. They have to really force some of these plays. Otherwise, this dive that is in motion could be bad for Wyena. Good use of the blast cone. Nova just initiates it. Flash from Kenvi guarantees the CC chain is there. Bradley just needs one more empowered auto attack, and he gets the shutdown onto Jays. Big for St. Thomas.
But look what's happening on the other side. At UST, they input so much of their efforts towards getting Bradley that kill, towards getting him some more gold. And Fisher College, again, 4 grubs are trying to make this play onto a Ray. He flashes out, so a good save from him that could have turned into a lot of turret damage there. And Yayo, pushing on this bottom side, does grab the first turret of the game for Fisher.
That was so well played by Array. I mean, that was a 3v1 dive, and Solar Flare, he had to sidestep, flash away from a Deadly Flourish, and also sidestep a freaking Nidalee Spear on top of it as well. And he knew that the best thing to do was save the cleanse and then just use the flash preemptively, so that if you are stunned in that scenario, I feel like you have to cleanse and then flash anyway, so might as well only just commit the 1 spell.
Alright. Bradley can teleport for this play. Kenvi is finishing his Gromp, but can use his Grand Starfall if they want to contest for this Herald. Jace is in the area. It seems like they are still working on this mid-jungle for St. Thomas. Gold is even. Doesn't seem like they're really contesting. They're not in a position to go for it. Malphite is going back to top lane. Nova's waiting for a timer. They're going to give this objective for free, and I have to ask here. I mean, Bradley's getting some gold. I know you're the big Nidalee fan on the broadcast right now. Let's do a very quick check-in. How are we feeling about Bruness's chances as the Nidalee?
I mean, if you do not start really cooking turrets on the side lanes or breaking open this mid lane within the next 4 minutes before this Rod of Ages completes, I think your window is passed up. Like, your second item spike on Nidalee is going to be okay, because most of the time with Leandries, you go for the Horizon Focus, and so it makes, like, your traps do a considerable amount of damage. But still, you are not the scaling composition. You want to be the beatdown composition, and you are kind of losing your timer here. So Fisher College, with the Rift Herald, I want to see them be super proactive with it, trying to unlock a turret that allows them to
potentially
may be in trouble here. Yayo still has flash. The spear shot does a lot of damage here. Bradley not going to commit his own, but oh, are we Grand Star falling? Yes, we are! But Kenvi doesn't have flash to fall over the wall, and Yayo being able to use it to safety.
Good. Another wave that's being secured here for Bradley. We wanted to see them put gold into this Victor. He's getting his evolves. Bruness is very sad. Thank you for the plus 37 on my camps, but we talk about these lane allocations. We said it was going to get harder for them as this game goes on, and Porsche in a side lane does not care about the damage that Wayena has. Wayena's not going to be able to have, like we said that maybe he should get Black Cleaver third. Well, then he won't have Muramana. So this is a situation where your items are very expensive, not in terms of the gold, but in terms of the item slots that you have. Wayena, it's going to be a long time before he sees a real armor penetration item, so it's going to be a long time for Porsche to ever feel like he's under any real threat here. And Brabro going for the what looks to be a RFC second, trying to just say, look, my focus is just to be hitting on Bradley and Array. If I'm hitting this Malphite, I've already done something wrong. And we've got this third dragon spawning. Nova in an insane flank position with Wayena just walking right past him. The Herald being spawned in mid by Fisher College.
It guarantees at least the mid-tier one falling, so now Fisher College should have an easier time into setting up some proactive vision control into these two jungle quadrants. Meanwhile, the collapse, Nova was looking for the flank onto Magi, but he's getting bursted low. Kenvi jumping onto Brabro, forcing him to flash away. Nova still alive, walks away, limping on 200 HP. A spear connects onto Bradley, but not enough damage to really force him out of the river. And with Porsche joining the fight, now the threat of this Malphite looms over the carries of Fisher College, and none of them really want to step up, because this Malphite will just pretty much set them to die.
Okay, I'm looking at Gnar. Yayo did just TP for this place, trying to build Mega Gnar. Nova is on the way, but this flank from Yayo might be able to break this open for Fisher College. They're getting good poke down onto some of the members here. Yayo finds it.
But there's an engage from Porsche there. Kenvi follows up. They find Wayena. Brunes is at least able to force Porsche away for now, but this is still a super tanky Malphite as he tries to flash forward. Unfortunately, he wasn't in range to send the cheese wheel after Brabro, but, you know, it's the thought that counts for the side of St. Thomas. They're able to bully away Fisher College with the fight, and Yayo, unfortunately, even with his Mega Gnar flank, not able to really find anything that threatens St. Thomas here.
Oh, does Brunes try to find it? He's got one final thing. He's trying to throw the spear into the pit. Doesn't end up going through. And that flank from Yayo was great. Unfortunately, there's a fight in the opposite side, and Kenvi and Nova are blocking the Jhin. So no ability for him to be able to snipe out Bradley. We're taking a look at Array. I mean, UST have been able to have such clean team fights so far in this series. Some of their early game and some of their laning phases have not been perfect, but this team, I think, relying on the wealth of experience that all of these players have in different levels of play and leaning on that fact to just slow games down, take correct team fights where they can, and play on, I mean, pretty solid objective timers, all things considered.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that the gold lead is even at this stage in the game, Rod of Ages has been completely stacked by St. Thomas. They've done what they needed to do. Their win conditions were to stall out this early game storm from the side of Fisher College. And I'm not saying that, you know, Fisher College cannot, the game is completely over from this point in the game. You know, it still comes down to execution, but now the game is just harder. You have a Malphite that is 2.5 items already. Who is killing this Malphite in a swift manner? No one can.
It's tough. You're like waiting for a third item. Maybe we've got Horizon Focus coming in from Brunes, but maybe they could try to make this flank. It's the start of the Otacon. Bradley is cut off from this entrance, but the Otacon's going to start to deal a lot of damage to the side of UST. Porsche going down.
Oh, Porsche got super chunked. He took one spear too many, and that was the one time where Malphite could fall. But it's traded back onto Wayena on the side. 4v4. Rest of Fisher College trying to push out the members
Bradley,
of St.
no!
Thomas. Yayo finds the massive Mega Gnar ultimate onto all the members of St. Thomas, routing them into their graves. Massive ace for Fisher College.
It's going to be start of the Otacon. UST, we just praised them for their ability to find team fights and get these objectives, but this was an ill-fated Otacon start. They got completely torn apart by all of the shredded resistances, the amount of HP damage. We go into this replay, and I'm just looking at this. Where are we ever finding a fight from the side of UST? Wayena flashes forward. Porsche is solo here.
Oh, Porsche TP'd in, was trying to look for stragglers here off the back end of it, but he already used the unstoppable force, and I think he knows his fate has been sealed. Not able to find a single kill off of a very ambitious play to try and find any members here for Fisher College, but they're just going to add another kill to their ranks.
Low-key, kind of worth. Porsche, good job. That's a good death. You're playing the Malphite anyway. You stop Fisher College from even trying to contest for an Otacon. You slow down the game a little bit here. It is a waste of his teleport, but we've already talked about it enough. Porsche is here for team fights. He is not going to be potent enough in a side lane, and that was a lot of gold here for Fisher. Bruness being able to finish what looks to be a Seeker's Arm Guard. Nova caught again. He takes a Blast Cone. Can Fisher find this kill?
I think Kenvi said, yeah, that's all you, bro. Don't walk towards me, please. And now
Array's dead. What are we doing?
No cleanse and no flash. St. Thomas are losing the sauce of the plot. Fisher College are just getting one kill snowballed after another, and they're going to benefit off of the massive amount of tempo that they're getting for free from St. Thomas.
Dragon spawns in a minute. We have Baron. Oh no, a pick.
Okay, Porsche is still healthy enough to be able to ult away. Yayo was nearly taken down by Bradley and Kenvi on that right side. Kenvi and Bradley still healthy enough that they could walk around on the map. They got to be careful about numbers advantage for the next 20 seconds while Array is still looking to spawn. I should say 10 seconds, correction there, but for Fisher College, it's not enough for them to look for control on the Otacon, and the fact that Porsche was able to at least stall it with that, solo TP into 3 people, at least continues to slow the game down for St. Thomas. But now Fisher College find themselves with a respectable gold lead, 4,000.
There's going to be a Malphite ult coming up, not on the same timer that this dragon spawns. Magi may have put this game in jeopardy, but a teleport from behind from Yayo.
There's no damage between any of those 3 champions there, only just CC. Bradley's got to keep his distance. Magi in the middle of all 5 members, tries to flash away. It is futile, and now Brabro was just solo stepping up as a Jhin. Wyena's going to send it just for a Nautilus, but that is a worth trade for University St. Thomas any day of the week. 1 for 3, and they're heading straight to the Baron.
Magi gets caught. The rest of the team try to make a play around what was happening, but UST grab the kills, look to start up this Baron, and it is yet again Yayo and Bruness from the outside looking in. Can they save this series? And engage from Porsche.
Yeah, and Bradley, the solo laner's working hand in hand to isolate the top laner from Fisher College. No more Gnar available. It has to be a solo mission from Bruness to see if he can find his way into the pit, but it's not going to happen. 1 versus 4. Too high of an odds and too high stakes to give up a free kill just for a chance at the Baron, and it goes over to St. Thomas.
All right, we get into this replay, but while this replay is going, teleports were happening for Fisher College. They're going to look to start up either the Dragon or the Otacon. We get into this fight, and Yayo cannot be here anymore. He had to flash out of this play. A great gravity well coming in to be able to find more members of Fisher College. Instead of starting the Otacon, instead of going for anything, they just pushed a wave, immediately retreated into their side of the jungle. You can see that Fisher are a little hesitant to move forward. This Baron now getting more value as they get a mid-wave thrown in. UST are going to start up this Dragon. I don't know if I like this from them. Yes, they have a lot of go buttons here, but I would love to see them use their Baron here. So Fisher College are going to find on the top side of this river, and this Dragon is already dead.
St. Thomas just trying to see if they could bait Fisher College in for a free engage, but it's now back to the lanes here to see if they can make the best use of this Baron buff while it is still on their side for the next minute or so. Bruness? Okay,
Bruness,
engaged.
no!
Italy. Okay, well, that is your sole AP damage gone, and now Porsche can just walk up knowing that no one other than Brabro has any forms of armor penetration. Yayo would have to stack up that Black Cleaver on him, helping out the rest of his team. But Porsche, I mean, just look at this dude, and Yayo getting caught out in the mid lane. I think Kenvi was able to find a flash stun with the Pantheon W, and now St. Thomas have made the numbers 5-3.
And is this the point that we look back and we're saying this is where UST took over in this game and closed out the series? We've had so many individual moments. It felt like the early game going the best here for Fisher, but their objective setups and how they've been able to get there. That's very close for Array. He is on literally death's door here from that fourth shot.
Kenvi
Pantheon slides
sending
through
it.
from Kenvi.
He has no flash, so he cannot close the distance on the Bro, looking for at least Magi, and Bradley is assisting him for the moment time being. Waena tries to look for the backline, but he dies in his own folly. Kenvi helping sun up the Magi so that Bradley
there it
can
is
go
again!
in. Porsche has the unstoppable force once again. Give this guy a crown because this is an absolute rock Chad king. My goodness, Porsche being able to deliver on the final game of this series, because St. Thomas are about to push it in. Maybe not end the game out all right, but with the death timers this long, they could just do it right here.
Yeah, Array's on his way. They just teleported. They have Baron. It is Yayo. It is Magi and Waena. Back up. All right, Nova might be going down here. It's going to be the inhibitor opened up. So we get to slow down the game just a little bit, but UST just took off so much of Fisher College's head in that fight, being able to find multiple picks after the Baron, grabbing themselves the Dragon. So even if they're not able to end within the next 2.5 minutes, there's still a Baron spawning in that time. There is a Chemtech Soul potentially spawning here for UST, and a victory lap for the Celts as they look to put the finishing touches on this series and look to head up into top 4 against Winthrop next week.
St. Thomas just need one more good fight to do it, baby. Inhibitor already open in the mid lane. And finally, St. Thomas have enough global pressure and wallet diff to just feel comfortable ripping this Otacon. No chance for a contest. More blood roses in their pockets, extending the experience lead. We have solo laners that are 2-3 levels above. Bradley's 4 levels above. He's level 18.
Okay, well, he has a Rod of Ages, so he gets to cheat a little bit, but I think your point still stands. This entirety of the UST team is way too far ahead at this point. The gold says 5,000, but it's going to start to feel more like 8 and 9 here for Fisher as the deficit. Yayo trying to get some objective bounties before this next fight. Minute and a half. I'm looking at the inventories. There's no one really close to potentially picking up a third item. Maybe Yayo after this recall. But the items that we see in Fisher College or on their champions are the items we're going to be seeing from them in this next fight, and potentially the strongest that they will have to be. They're going to need to find an engage onto Bradley. They have all these summoner spells still up for UST. It is looking dark here for the Falcons.
And while we talked about this Malphite being such an unstoppable force and such a giant front line that you cannot deal with as Fisher College, you're absolutely right. Your only hope is just to blow up the back line and then deal with the tanks as a 5-man unit afterwards. But it's going to be so difficult to do so. You have to evade Malphite ultimate. You have to evade Pantheon interactions. You have to evade Nautilus interactions from his kit as well. And with St. Thomas tactfully playing around their backline and ensuring that they're keeping that fortress around them, I don't think it's going to happen. But Fisher College, maybe they can find a miracle here as the curtain call is opened up, getting some cheese and poke damage onto Kenvi. He's already below 50% HP. Yayo on the chase. Bruness firing another spear. Nova sidesteps it, and Array is able to get some decent poke damage back into Yayo's
look
health
at Bradley.
bar.
Bradley's on the back, on the bottom side of the map.
Maybe this is a good pick onto Nova. Porsche forced to use the ultimate just to run away. Array is trying to get some extra damage in. Bradley is forced to TP in just to get there sooner, but he's pushing in the mid wave. The rest of St. Thomas, if they can keep the remaining members of Fisher College here, minions will start to make their way into the base, and they'll start to work on those Nexus towers. They stop Yayo from getting a chance to recall. Array flashes in, guarantees that the Gnar is not going to get a chance to recall, and now it's just an all-in onto this Baron, but all 4 members are here. Look at the base out! You just saw it briefly. The minions are hitting the Nexus turrets, and St. Thomas have caught Fisher College in a bad spot. They can't decide whether they want to fight or they have to get out, and now they're losing members left, right, and center. Bruness is going to send it for Kenvi. Trades one back, but I think we already know where Porsche is headed. He TP'd into the base. He only has 1 minion left, so he's going to win on the next minion wave.
Porsche, no!
But it's okay. It's fine. It's fine. He now can help regroup with Bruness. Now that Bruness is isolated, We've got death timers on every single member from Fisher College, a full ace for the side of St. Thomas. It could be enough time to close the game, but it's not going to happen because they have to walk away and guarantee soul for themselves.
What are they doing? UST, even Bradley's TP, he was on the red buff here where UST are now, and he just TPs maybe like 15 feet in front of him to the mid lane. I think that UST are getting a little bit ahead of themselves, maybe feeling like, the series is kind of done and dusted. Bradley so far ahead at this point. UST as a whole just completely dominating Fisher College. It's unfortunate. Fisher College, they only lost one matchup to get here in the lower bracket. It was up against Maryville just yesterday. And now they're going to be having two back-to-back losses here that immediately drop them out of the tournament, making top 5 still an incredible achievement for this program. But they have looked lost. They have looked unable to play in this series. And UST are going to continue to move on and look to try to finish out now with a Chemtech Soul.
Now, Fisher College, for what it's worth, I think they've had really great ideas in the early game, and it's definitely been impressive in some of the looks for what they were able to get done. But when it comes past the 20-minute mark, St. Thomas has been able to find cleaner execution of the win conditions they are set out to do, and able to have better composure when it comes to these later game scenarios. A curtain call from Brabro tries to find for any stragglers, but the Baron is already secure for the side of St. Thomas, and now with the Chemtech Soul on their side, they are strong enough to all group on the top side of the map, look for a pick, and end the game off that.
Surely UST are able to end within the next 2 minutes, right? Surely we don't have Nova getting caught out or Kenvi getting caught out. We have them pushing, like you said, another wave as well coming up from behind. See that Yayo pushing in this mid wave. He'll be able to recall. How much damage can USD actually get done here? This wave is going to pull through, and they're going to have the Baron buff alongside it. Fisher College need to make the defense of all time. They have hit their 4th item. An engage from Porsche.
They found the first one to fall. It was the Nidalee and Bruness, and now St. Thomas can make their way easily through the carries one after another. The cheese wheel connects on the Brabro, slowing him down so that Bradley gets the last hit onto the Jin, and St. Thomas will chase Yayo to ensure that every member of Fisher College is done away for the rest of the CLOL championship season. Yayo will get a flash away, but St. Thomas can just return to finishing this game, to finishing this series, and advancing to the lower bracket semifinal.
UST, they say history is going to repeat itself. They knocked Fisher out in top 8 last year. They knocked Bay State out of the Grand Finals with a 3-0 sweep. 30-19 is the final score here in Game 3. And UST are one series closer to being able to see themselves in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Their road now has to go through Winthrop University, and then the loser of Ole Miss University and Maryville University. If they are able to get those two back-to-back series wins, we'll see them at Grand Finals. But it's still a long road ahead, and, it's going to have to be taken one game at a time. But, again, congratulations to University of St. Thomas for being able to put away a very dominant 3-0. Obviously, the early games were a bit all over the place in every single game, but when it comes to post-20-minute game scenarios, clearly this team has a better understanding of how they want to execute some of these conditions for their map state, and being able to prioritize objectives when they need to and be able to make swift plays. I still think it is very respectable to be able to pull the trigger on Barons so confidently, and Fisher College both times in games 1 and 2 never saw it coming, never were able to react to it fast enough.
Yeah, that also does mean that we are saying goodbye to one of our teams here. There are 4 teams left: Maryville, Ole Miss, now UST, and Winthrop here. And UST keeping the South's dreams alive. Obviously, they've come out of this conference first for the last 4 years of CLOL and kind of keeping that tradition. They're now moving up to 14-5 game score, which I think is really impressive. But that's one of the NECC seeds as well falling. One of the conferences that coming into this tournament, a lot of people had their eyes on. It was going to be the NECC versus the North. So far, that is proving to be the case with who is left. But UST also showing that there is some flair still left down in the South.
Yeah. And you know what? I wouldn't have had it any other way. Even if, for their sake, they definitely are going to be looking at some of those early pre-15-minute setups that they had and try to clean up the play so that when they're going up against, the teams that are still left in the tournament, that it is not something that bites them in the butt. But for St. Thomas, again, massive congrats to them. And, as we bid adieu to Fisher College, as you already talked about, this is one of the teams that comes from the NECC, which is clearly proving to be one of our strongest conferences in the entire CLOL kind of ecosystem, right? And I think there's still a lot to be excited for in, future seasons of CLOL or whatever, tier 2 championships or tournaments are in the space for likes of Bruness and Yayo and Wayena to an extent as well, because obviously some of these talents were brought in recently, right? The two jungle mid from EMEA, Yayo coming in off the bench to replace Bajani, and Yayo having a lot of respectable performances for him, depending on how new they are to the competitive scene. I think this is something that, maybe Fisher College can try and really build around for the future. Or if other teams are looking at them and saying, you know what, we might want them for our team next year. Who knows?
Maybe, but the fact that we've gotten this entire round of play here has been very dominant. Even when we looked at our upper bracket semifinals, almost all of them are 3-0s. Then we have UST versus UHSB go to 4, Winthrop go to 4. This is, I think, one of the most dominant series we've been able to see from UST here in the Collegiate Championship, and against a very highly rated team. I mean, going through the bracket, they first had to play against Converse, the 14th seed, they 3-0 them. Then they lose to Western in a full 5-game series. Purdue Northwest takes them to 5 games, and then UHSP, mostly a UST favored series, but there was that one game that they did end up throwing in game number 3. I am just really impressed with UST, but there is so much work still left to be done. I hope that the week break in between now and next week is going to serve them well, as they're going to be playing up against Winthrop, so another NECC team that they're going to have to face off against, and one where Fisher, they've been playing only really in the NECC. They've been only doing in-conference and maybe a few other things on the side in terms of some lands that they've been attending, but Winthrop, they have so much experience. This roster has been together for 3+ years at this point. Winthrop playing in the NACL at the same time. They've been winning tournaments outside of collegiate at the same. So there is going to be this is a big bar for them to be able to cross, and hopefully they're able to level up their gameplay, especially when we talk about this mid-jungle.
Yeah, I think St. Thomas will definitely, with every series that looms ahead of them on their respective journey to North Carolina for grand finals, every team is going to just get almost exponentially harder, right? You already mentioned, going through Winthrop University, regardless of the winner of that, has to go then into the loser of either Maryville University or Ole Miss University. And, regardless of what the performances have been like from the Ole Miss core on Supernova and NACL, when it comes to CLOL, they're putting it away. They are, kicking names down and really putting in really strong work in terms of just overall team fighting presence on the map, and they have, at least able to execute a lot of the early game ideas they want to get for themselves through Keel in the jungle. So I think for both Winthrop or University of St. Thomas, whoever ends up going through, you really are going to have to battle for your lives just to get through North Carolina, which makes it even more deserved and sweeter if you are able to rise to that challenge.
We have our MVP here. I think it could be no one else other than the man in the mid lane, Mr. 2 Chainz himself. Bradley here coming on through. He has played so excellently in this series, really kind of exhibited a pretty large mid-gap going up against Wayena. And I think leaning on some of that experience that we were talking about and his level of play outside of just this tournament alone. So good to see that Bradley is still putting in some pretty good performances, and he's going to have a pretty tough task ahead of him. Again, those mid laners that we saw ahead of him, Sword, and then having to play against a Syla. Eventually, if he does end up playing against Maryville, he's going to have to be thinking about Spyrax as well. So we're going to need to see more out of the man in the mid lane here for St. Thomas. And again, big shoes to fill, as Robbie Bob was kind of the franchisee player for this team, and bringing them to multiple championships.
Yeah, being the face of St. Thomas for many years here before Bradley taking over definitely, raised some questions here. But I think Bradley has just shown that with his range of experience that he has had, multiple years in the NACL, both as a top laner as well as a mid laner, it has really paid off and just shown that he is one of the strongest carries left in the tournament right now. And the way that he is still able to manufacture leads with either, resources being helped given to him by his jungle, or, even if he's getting focused down, he is still at least dictating the pace of the game and how many resources he's getting for himself, and being able to just construct such insane leads, not just in gold, but also in levels and experience. I think just all that, time in tier 2 for NACL has just shown him like, hey, this is how you can maximize a lot of your presence on the map in these states of the game.
Yep, I mean, Bradley also, I think, got a lot of help this series. Kenvi was doing a lot of heavy lifting to try to make sure that he got himself the gold. We have an interview with Bradley. He should be on the line with us. We're going to move on over to there. Bradley,
hey!
Can you hear us? Oh, no, you're muted.
We can't
okay,
hear
wait.
him.
We can't hear you. Legendary Bradley Tech. Well, this would not be a Bradley interview if we didn't have something go wrong.
It feels like we're on the LPL unofficial English broadcast again. We're running through tech stuff. Well, let's see. Well, while we buy some time. What is that in the background? Oh, wait. No. On the other side. It's on the floor. Is it like a sushi plush?
It's a little marshmallow guy.
Oh, marshmallow guy. Yo. Oh, that's so sick. I love that. Mine is
okay. Can we hear you, Bradley? Test. GG. Okay, guys, we're still waiting. We're gonna get someone on this. All right, we're sending Bradley back to the Shadow Realm as we try to fix his mic for I
want to talk to
the
Mr.
interview
Two
here.
Chains, man.
Yeah,
Shoot.
It's okay. He'll be here for a second. I think a good idea then, while we're waiting for that interview, is maybe we get the bracket up so we can kind of talk about that, and then we'll move back to the interview and close out the show. So, kind of a look. Our upper bracket does not change. Again, upper finals next week. We will have this matchup on the mainstream. For everybody at home, we have not been trying to dodge Maryville, but we're going to see them finally here on the University Esports NA channel, going up against Ole Miss. An insane rivalry between these guys, and finally being able to see Ole Miss play against MU on the collegiate stage. And after that, we go down to our lower bracket. We have Winthrop versus UST. It's just, this lower bracket has been insane. Winthrop on an insane run down here in the lower bracket, now winning 5 series in a row to make it down here into top 4. And now UST trying to bounce back after getting an early knockout going up against Western.
Yeah. And the fact that St. Thomas are able to persist through here after being knocked out by Western just goes to show their tenaciousness and their resilience in being able to bring it to a top 4 finish at the very least. And the fact that they are able to manage to get all the way into the top 4, it means that they're going to be able to still get a bit of that prize pool that we showed earlier in the graphic during the pre-show. But obviously, the greater prize will be going further and further into the tournament until you can at least get a trip to Raleigh as well. But we'll remind everyone that top 4 finish at the very least is 5,000 USD per team, 6,000 for third, 8 for second, and 16,000 for first place. And at least, top 2, you have to go to Raleigh. We're going NC State, baby. That is my backyard back in the day when I was a high school student. So this is going to be super fun time, and hope that anyone, whether you are competing or going as a whether you're going as a fan or competing, hope to see you all there. we have yet to confirm.
Tickets are free. Tickets are free. Go,
Yes.
please go.
Tickets are please go. Yes. Show up. It's gonna be a fun time. And if you want food recommendations, I got you. I lived in NC for 5-6 years, and I'm very familiar with the Raleigh area. So feel free to hit me up. You know.
Everybody, please go spam message Rafa on all of his social media accounts.
Oh,
please
shit.
overwhelm him. Even if you're not mutuals, please message him. We have got the interview now with Bradley, but just like his NACL wins, part 2. We're here, Bradley.
Can you hear me? Does it work?
Yeah!
Nice.
Let's
Okay.
go.
Nice.
All right, we got Mr. 2 Chainz in the building.
Congratulations again on your win here today. I know that the series yesterday against UHSP was a little bit of fun. Kind of talk to us a little bit about what it's been like here playing with UST and kind of being able to make this run so far.
For sure. I think overall UST it's been pretty fun. I think we get along pretty well, like in and outside of the game. So that aspect is like really nice, and I think everyone, we enjoy playing together. And it has been shaky at times. In fact, we recently had to do a roster kind of swap thing, and Nova is going to be playing support with us now, and so we're still a bit shaky, right? We haven't really had that much time playing with him. He hasn't even played the game that much himself recently, but now that he's integrated into the roster, he's begun to like play like a lot of solo queue, do a lot of bot review. We're trying to like work around the edges with what we got. And so I don't expect us to be clean right now, but after this nice 3-0, we have a week, we can do more scrims. Things should be looking a lot better going forward.
Nice.
Coach Nova going into the gym and putting in the reps so that he can level up with the boys. I'm looking forward to hearing more tales about the solo queue sessions of NovaBot. I'm not sure what his rank is, but you know what? As long as he is getting the fundamentals down.
I don't know if we should ask about his rank.
I think we should. I think that'd be pretty funny. Nova's always a very humble guy, so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's like, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I hope it's Masters. I think it's Masters. But yeah.
Okay.
I'll ask Garrett.
The way you were phrasing that almost made it sound like he was an Emerald or something, But if it's Masters,
to be fair, he didn't really play the game, right? He's our coach, so now that he's actually forced to play, it's a little different.
Right. So I think I'm before you go, Dimitri, I just want to follow up. I don't know how much content St. Thomas does, but I think a solo queue update on Nova solo queue adventures would be peak tweets, just to really strike fear into Winthrop University next weekend.
That is true. When you see his, UST culture, we kind of like joke around too much, and to do it on broadcast, like for people, I don't want us to think like I'm like bashing Nova, because like truly I think he is like playing really well, and I'm happy that he was able to sub in and be the person that we need. But like what I will say is, like, I think if they look at if we were to tweet NovaBot solo queue ventures, I think they might get a little bit of confidence. So like yeah, I don't know if we'll be doing that yet. We might need a little bit of time for that. But yeah,
give him a couple days to grind.
Yeah. Maybe. But hear me out, Bradley. You don't have to actually do this, but you could give them false hope, and then if you win, then the tweet's a banger.
That's
it's
true.
Like, wow.
I feel like this interview is more just me bashing Nova, and that's not really what I'm like trying to do.
Look.
Okay, we can.
I'll run interference here. Nova's a great guy. He's obviously done a lot of substituting for UST.
We love Nova.
So exactly. # we love Nova. But I kind of wanted to ask, especially because you're coming in. I think you're filling in for a lot of big shoes, especially for the fact that this is a team that has won the tournament twice in years past. Obviously a bit of a different roster, but you're also coming in for Robbie Bob. So I kind of wanted to ask, like, your personal experience now, having played through most of this bracket and being able to play through I think even your own conference. Like, what has it been like playing CLOL again, like being able to kind of experience that?
CLOL has always been pretty fun for me. The last time I played, I was with Bethany, and Bethany.
Yeah.
Honestly, the environment is kind of the same. Like this team and Bethany, like we don't want to be the team that gets really angry at each other when we do poorly, right? And I don't think any team tries that, but I think that can happen when everyone is not fully on the same page or they're not all bought in to the same thing, right? Like if you have some players who really, really, really need to win no matter what, and then there's some players who, don't really mind if they lose. I think that's where like the kind of imbalance is. But with UST and with Bethany, we're all we have the same mindset, right? We all want the same thing. So I think, whether we win or we lose, it's been really enjoyable. As far as myself though, going into collegiate, I think I have pretty high standards for myself, right? I think
Yeah.
with the experience that I have, um, I want to do good. And it might sound really cocky to say this here on broadcast, but personally, if I keep playing how I know I will play, I don't think there's a mid that's better than me in this tournament. I think I will be able to prove that as well. So I'm not trying to come from a place of confidence and say like, yeah, I'm gonna. Oh wait, can I swear? Or no? Yes, no.
Probably not, but
Okay, I don't want to. I don't want to
you
say
can
I'm gonna
do it
come in here
live.
and dumpster everybody. I was gonna
Yeah.
say the other word, but I do
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that with how I'm playing right now, and I'm doing well in solo queue as well, actually.
Hmm.
With how I'm playing right now, I think if me and Ken keep playing how we're playing, because Ken's been a really important part of my leads as well. I think me and him are on the
Yes.
same page at almost every play. I think my one weakness as a player, he actually covers very, very nicely, and I think that's why me and him are able to kind of show on broadcast the leads that I'm able to get
Mm.
and translate, and he's a big part of that too. So I do want to shout him out. But yeah, I think if things go how they're supposed to, I think we will actually make you guys pretty surprised going
I
into
mean,
That's
listen.
Maryville.
awesome.
Yeah, you know what, Bradley? I don't think it's cocky at all. I think you're saying it very respectfully, and it just speaks to the level of confidence that you have in yourself. And I think that's something that the St. Thomas roster definitely needs going forward, because we know the Titans that are ahead of you guys
Yeah.
in this bracket as a whole and the legacies that they carry on their back. So if you and the rest of St. Thomas are able to make the miracle run through the lower bracket, through Winthrop, through whoever loses between Maryville and Ole Miss University, you will get a chance to give St. Thomas its best possible finish in its swan song, bowing out with the college program. So I think you are totally valid in that. And before we let you go, Bradley, because you spent a lot of time with us and want to make sure that we're respectful of your time, we've had a lot of fun having you on the show as always. Any shout outs you would like to give before we let you go?
Oh man, there's so many people to shout out. First my teammates. I think shout out to them, of course, and then shout out my family. I think I've said this a lot on a lot of interviews and a lot of broadcasts. They are actually very supportive. My mom. I think my mom even follows you guys on Twitter. She keeps up with
Oh
the
yeah.
scene.
Thank you.
Yep.
She texts me during the games, and it's not just my mom too, right? My other like my family, my brothers, they all gather in a Discord to watch me play. I have a lot of friends that support me. They watch my games, they message me, right? So friends, family, team, and then lastly, I think I'll shout out everyone in like Twitch chat that supports us. I mean, low key,
Good.
like okay, 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 I can say this because like it's just something I've noticed, but I feel like
Okay.
UST, like low key people be rooting against us, and I don't mind. But like for the people who do root for us, like thank you, obviously, right? But like I've
Yeah.
always been a little bit curious because like it seems like really easy to root against us. I don't really know why. I don't think I'm a
It's
villain.
because you guys have won. Literally, it's easy to hate
Mm.
when you're on
No,
top,
but
when you have a team that has.
mm.
I know you haven't won, but like
But it's not just me either. Ken hasn't won. I haven't won. Array hasn't won. And now Nova hasn't won. It's only Porsche, right? It's only Porsche. So like realistically speaking, have we won? No.
I know, but
No, I
it's
don't
the
think so.
prestige of the program, right? I get
That's
what
true.
you're
That's true.
talking
That's
about
true.
though, and if you think about it, if you think you're underdogs, Wait until you see Winthrop, bro. I feel like Winthrop
Oh,
walking to every tournament. They're like, yeah, these guys are gonna blow it up somehow. They're gonna lose somehow. So maybe we just have two underdogs fight up against each other in the next weekend's matchup. So
Gonna be a banger.
got a lot of stuff going forward.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bradley. Again, congratulations on getting MVP for the series as well as winning. And we'll see you next week up against Winthrop University.
Thank you.
Bye, Bradley. All right.
Always good to catch up with him. I'm glad that he and
yeah.
him and his family are doing well.
It's always nice to hear when, you know, families not only supporting their kids in League of Legends endeavors, and especially in CLOL, but also it's even, you know, nice little bow that they support us here on the broadcast as well, because we do it for them, guys, and you know, we're happy to be part of this ecosystem and be able to be the first people to tell their stories across the world here. But Dimitri, that's the end of our show. Quick, swift 3-0 in the books. It is a short broadcast day for us here. I'm just going through my run of shows. This is my first CLOL championship broadcast.
We're good to go. I mean, we had our interviews. We went through our bracket. We had obviously our MVPs. So again, I want to thank everybody at the St. Clair for the student production that have been able to help us, from the observers and our director, not only Valerie, but also Lexi helping us here. So thank you to all the students that have been able to help make this broadcast. Thank you to everybody at GG Tech as well. And Mark, final shout outs before we send it out and get ready for next weekend's games.
Shout out to everyone at Twitch chat. Shout out to you, buddy. Thank you for being my casting partner on my CLOL championship debut. It was fun. It definitely brings me back to nostalgia days of 2020 and 2021 and even 2019 when I first started casting, so it feels like I'm coming home. Anyway, thanks again, everyone, for supporting the broadcast and tuning in. See you all next time.